Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the special council meeting for Monday, March 26, 2018. We do have some matters that need to be dealt with that are better, that are more appropriate and by charter regulations be done with at a council meeting. So that's why this was originally scheduled to be a committee of the whole. The committee of the whole doesn't have the authority to deal with some of the items on tonight's agenda. So we do have a scheduled recess at 6:30. Our clerk tonight is Ms. Sheila Gurry. So introduction of late items, please. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. On the addendum this evening, we are for agenda item 4C, adoption of the minutes. We're changing the date of the minutes from Wednesday, March 20th to Wednesday, March 1st, 2018. We're adding agenda item 9C, Park Avenue and 8th Street, road, sidewalk, and utility cost share. And we're adding agenda item 9D, covenant amendment application, number CA7 for 4745 Ledgerwood Road. And I believe there's a number of additions from councillors here tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I have a request for an item on item 12 for a delegation not related to the items, and that would be on a bylaw zoning issue. And then on number 11, because it's a council meeting, I'd like to bring forward a notice of motion regarding some finance, some reporting. Thank you.
Zoning issue. So they'll need to be taken separately. So the first one.
It's a bylaw zone issue altogether in one. That one, for the number 12, Mr. Thien, it relates to his zoning and a bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
And then the second issue would be under number 11, other business, and that would be a notice of motion.
Okay, so for the first one, Councillor Kipp, can we have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Yoakum. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is a notice of motion.
Yes, under other business.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
I don't need it for a notice of motion, I don't believe.
We do need it for an agenda item. Am I correct, Ms. Gurry?
No, Your Worship, he could just bring
Okay.
forward a notice of motion
Thank
under
you.
other business. Thank you.
Others. Councillor Fuller.
I'd like to add Greg Sorensen as a delegation to speak to an item not on the agenda.
Can you elaborate on what the item is?
Georgia Greenway.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I would like to add correspondence that we got from the VIRWIC to the agenda. And then I would also like to add, would you like to take that one first as correspondence? Do you need to vote on that?
Separately.
Okay, so first is to add correspondence that we got an email.
So it's been moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Great. And then I would like to add a delegation, Craig Cookman, under 9B, under delegations after Ms. Hastings and Ben.
So it's been moved by Councillor Hong and seconded by Councillor Kipp under 9B. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. And Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. I would like to add Mr. Lawrence Reaper to the agenda as a late delegation as it relates to the downtown revitalization tax exemption program. I indicated that earlier to Ms. Gurry today. And I would like to add under other business a notice of motion as it relates to bylaw 7,000.
Okay, so under the Lawrence Reaper, that is under which item, Councillor?
7B, I think it is. Downtown revitalization.
7B1?
Yes.
7B1. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And you'd also like to have a notice of motion
I
under,
suspect it'll be under other business,
that's right, under 11, other business.
and that would be regarding bylaw 7,000.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hong. I'm sorry. You're correct. Thank you for information. Okay, so, Councillor Fuller again?
Yeah, I'd like to make a notice of motion as well, with regards to unfunded liabilities.
Okay. Also under 11, unfunded liabilities. Thank you. All right. Motion for adoption of the agenda as amended.
So I'm just wondering, does moving one
Come
item?
after the motion, after the agenda's been adopted.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So there's our agenda for tonight. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I would ask that we move item 12A, State of the Child Report, move it up into presentations. One of the delegates has a young child and needs to be able to go home by 6 p.m. And one of the other presenters also has another commitment at 7 p.m. So I'd like to move them up to presentations.
So moved and seconded by Councillor Hong. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So the next item is the adoption of the minutes for March 1st. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Under the Mayor's report, I just wanted to say that as of this afternoon, I had a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and real estate representative to review, again, the speculation tax. And it's my understanding that about 3 hours ago, the minister made some further changes. And I cannot stress enough how poor it is for policy, government policy, to be made on the fly like this. This legislation was introduced in the House under the budget as and with very, very little detail. And now here we are as a community trying to struggle with how it may affect our economy, affect homeowners, affect owners of properties in our community. So now that we have further information on it, we'll be looking to drill down a little bit further and hopefully have a response to the minister in short order. Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Presentations is where I asked State of the Child.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can reverse that, Ms. Curry.
Thank you.
Thank you. I expect that's what you were asking about as well. Thank you. All right, so now we're on to presentations. So the first presentation tonight, which would fall under the rules of delegation of a limit of 10 minutes, is Scott Bradford, Executive Director in the Nanaimo Child Development Center, to present the State of the Child Report to increase awareness to children's health. And neither one of you look like Scott Bradford. Dr. Hasselbeck, good evening.
Your Worship, members of council, we have lost Mr. Bradford. But in fairness to yourselves and to Ms. Booner, who is really important to have here right now, I think we'd like to proceed with the presentation. And I hope you can tolerate me speaking on what's probably a much more important issue than most of the time when I come to talk to you. So if I can have your concurrence in doing so, I would love to move forward.
Certainly, please do.
Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Amber Booner, who is our Early Years Coordinator for the Nanaimo Early Years Partnership. And this dynamic individual is the one that's been driving in our community that very agenda, which I think that council needs to be much more apprised of and aware of. And that's what I'd like to do in the next few minutes. Some of you have had an opportunity to review the State of the Child report in previous iterations. This is the third edition. It's been released every 2 years. It provides a good benchmark against which we can measure the progress of our children and answer the question, how are Nanaimo kids doing? This particular iteration has the advantage that we're able to get in some of the census information from 2016. And interestingly, that actually gives us about 10 years of information that we can make comparisons on. Through this, what we've seen is a significant increase in terms of average income, but that's predominantly being carried by those with higher incomes. We did see enough of an increase in lower income families that sort of kept with the average over the last 5-year period of time, but lone parent families, which once again have increased in terms of the relative proportion, saw a substantially lower increase in terms of their income. Through the same period of time, costs of residential homes, rental, food have all gone up at a much higher rate than the even median income over that time frame. And I can provide details, I just wanted to introduce them to you. What we saw, generally speaking, was poverty levels in the whole community stayed the same, but unfortunately we saw an increase in the poverty levels amongst children and actually increased up to about 24%. So 1 in 5 children now in our community under the age of 6 is living in lower socioeconomic status. One of the other main things that this particular report was able to focus in on were Aboriginal families, not related to the poverty issue in particular, but it gives, pulls together what information we can collect about our First Nations members. We haven't been able to do that to the same level of extent, and not as a surprise to Council, the growth in our First Nations community exceeds that of the growth in the non-First Nations community. And we expect that that trend will continue going forward into the future. Has a lot to do with how we establish our planning. As I alluded to, we are looking at 1 in 4 children now living in poverty. About a third of our children, a third of those accessing our food banks are children. And a large number within our community that actually are living in impoverished conditions that require these services. It's a plea to yourselves to keep children on the agenda. We also, in our community, have historically had a high rate of children that require the protection of the state in general. Right now, that's up around 3.5%. That's about 75% higher than the BC average. Here on the island, we're about 50% higher, without a really good explanation about why so many of our children end up in care or requiring need of protection. And our rates amongst our First Nations children are the same as what we see in the rest of the province. So it's not the proportion of First Nations families. We have a higher rate overall. Some good news that and some not so good news. We have still long waits for access to particular types of treatment. Some of those specialized treatments from our Child Development Center. And Mr. Bradford was the Executive Director of the Child Development Center. He is until the end of this week, and then he's moving on to a new position. So we have to say goodbye to him, unfortunately. We've seen immunization rates actually beginning to increase. What we've seen of decreases on is relative physical activity. It's actually decreasing in our grades 3 to 4. We're seeing okay levels of food consumption. Dental illness is at a fairly stable level, and it's actually pretty good compared to when all of us were young children. And so what we have been able to identify is some better components. Fruits and vegetables are decreased, while other healthy eating habits actually aren't so bad. Council has been good enough to identify a variety of low-cost environments for recreational purposes and has the Leisure Economic Access Program in place. It's important to reemphasize the value of that in terms of access for those that don't actually have those economic resources. Council has also, through its wisdom over the years, established a reasonably good distribution of parks, recreation services, and libraries, and our library attendance and utilization is up considerably over the last few years with the expansion in the library services. So, amongst all this, one of the things that was asked of the early years partnership was, well, what have you done about it? Okay, and that's a fair comment. If you go through the report, there are highlighted boxes in the report that identify a variety of new programming that has substantively been implemented in the last 3 to 5 years as a result of the information coming forward in the State of the Child report. I hope we can build on this in the future. I think there's some really great successes out there in terms of the interaction that exists among the partnership, amongst the members, the collaborative efforts on getting things like the play boxes and the signs in the parks unplug and play, and provide opportunities, the distribution of the family magazine, and as I say, there's a significant list there. There are some solutions that we need to be looking at, and there are some things that we would like to specifically ask Council. So over the upcoming years, we need to be looking at how to increase our supports to things like healthier food access for our children, more low-cost programming, and enhancing our supports to some of the programming that's being put in place. But in closing, I think we'd like to ask Council to look at a couple of opportunities. Children often aren't coming to this table. Okay, they're certainly not presenting here, but they're not actually being discussed here. And I do appreciate that Council's got very weighty things on your agenda. One of the things that I'd like to point the challenge out to Council is, how do you bring children and a child lens to what you do in your day-to-day work here? We'd actually start by making the request that Council formally explore what would it take to seek designation as making Nanaimo a UNICEF child-friendly city. Now, you're going to say, what does that mean? Well, that's what I'm saying. Ask for it, and then that information can come. So it's a challenge to you. We have a developing poverty reduction plan, which I think hasn't necessarily moved as quickly forward over the last period of time because of other crises, but something I hope Council will not forget about. We want Council to continue to support those low-cost recreational access opportunities. And fundamentally, it's a philosophical shift about how do you yourselves as members of Council make kids a priority when you're actually making decisions and put that childhood lens on to what's going to be most important in making Nanaimo a community that children are safe, free, happy to play in, and want to stay here in the future. And with that, I'm going to look to my colleague Amber and sort of say, have you got anything else you'd like to add? And then to yourselves for questions.
No, I think you did absolutely great, and I just please hope that you would consider this because it is very important for our community.
Thank you. Does Council have any questions for the delegation? Councilor Yocum.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Absolutely, I work with children on a daily basis, and I totally concur with your saying, and we can do as much as we can, but we need provincial government. But since this new government came in, unfortunately, the same bureaucrats are steering the same mandate of the previous government. I work in child welfare. I'm the executive director of a profile agency that serves 9 First Nations, including this region, on reserve only. The child protection data is unfortunately horrendous in this region, this mid-island, in Nanaimo, Duncan, North. Since we've taken over child welfare, our numbers have gone drastically downwards to just basically 0 kids coming to care to, if so, keeping children connected to community and family, because that's our mandate, because we're doing it ourselves. I'm trying to do the same off reserve for the Aboriginal population, and I'm getting the same bureaucrats in Victoria pushing against us doing it. So it's easy to come here and say, so I'm in support of this. And whatever I can do, I will. But I push this battles every day, and you get the same government mindset. No matter what political party is in, it's the same people with the same mindset. So I just want to say that children need a child protection's a major crisis. This is not news to yourself. And also I met with our 9 chiefs of the 9 First Nations, and half the meeting was on child welfare, the other half was on island health. And I'm not saying myself, But big concern, they had a big meeting with whoever's in charge of the hospital, the internal racism that happens at the Nanaimo Regional. So it takes the mindset of these bureaucrats, not just us. And I'm not offloading this on you guys, you two, this is great. I'm glad you're bringing this awareness, so you guys a good report. So I hope the same talk goes towards the provincial government instead of worrying about the governance struggles we've had at this table. Actually, let's get to real concrete work and deal with children in care and the hospitals and the poverty. So I just want to share the child protection one because those stats are accurate and they're alarming. But as people are doing, they are trying to make change within the systems of their own. So I hope you guys ever look into on-reserve stats are actually going down because that's my unbelievable staff doing great work. So we are making a difference, and however I can with my one spot in the city make a difference. That's in our mandate, absolutely. Children come first, absolutely. The center of all our communities. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the delegation? Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Dr. Hasselbeck and Amber. I appreciate you coming with this information and always startling the statistics. Do you take the same presentation to the School District 68?
Thank you, and through your worship to Councillor Bestwick. School District 68 has actually taken a specific component to look at the State of the Child report. It was brought by some of our colleagues. It is a collaboration, so it's not owned by any one of us. So yes, they have had an opportunity. They've actually had it on their agenda, and they have had a discussion. I'm not sure where that's taken them, though.
Thank you. Just when I see the statistic on exercise and so on and so forth, grades 3 and 4, and where kids spend 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, would be an education in and of itself to be considered more active. And when the last check mark, keep kids a priority when making decisions at the city council table. In a backhanded way, I think the preservation of Colliery Dam Park and not a meandering stream running through there created an amazing outdoor aqua adventure, if you will, for generations. So I'm thrilled that this council made that commitment to preserve in its existing form, so people can swim and recreate there for free, and other places. So this is where Neck Point and Loudon Park and many of the parks.
Question for the delegation, Councillor?
Yep. So I would ask that if your organization acknowledges and recognizes the outdoor recreation opportunities that council invests in for children and families in a broader sense.
Yeah, thank you, and through your worship, I think there's a clear delineation of the support provided by the city, the parks and recreational opportunities, and that's why we did try to ensure that there was a focus on that. I think that there are other policy areas when it comes to social enhancements in the community where perhaps that lens also needs to be built up a little bit further. So it's not just about the parks and recreational components and leisure activities, increased physical activities. I think that there are other things relative to the impoverishment in particular that we need a collective community response that all of us need to be sitting at the table talking about.
Thank you. Third parties and the school board and ourselves could make a huge impact in that area. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe, question for the delegations.
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Hasselbeck and Ms. Bruner, for your presentation. Always very worthwhile information. And focusing on the more positive side of things on the back page of your report, I'm really pleased to see, as Councillor Bestwick alluded to, that there is a large role, I think, that our parks and recreational facilities play in healthy children, not diminishing the poverty side of things and the problems that you're pointing out. But my question, I just jumped out at me under library usage, and I don't know if you have the answer to this question. It said that there has been a 45% increase in attendance since in 2016. And to me, that's a huge increase and a very positive increase. Does that relate to school programming, or is there any other reason that you can point out that very positive stat?
Through your worship, that's an increase since 2014 and probably is inclusive of both the new North Nanaimo facility as well as the migration of the branch into whichever mall it went into.
Country Club.
Country Club, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I certainly are supportive of your council ask as it shows on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm really surprised that we're actually not a UNICEF child-friendly city, because I remember collecting coin during Halloween a long time ago when I was a kid for UNICEF. So I think that we're going to have to take a serious look at that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. With regards to enhanced low-cost recreational access, how can we enhance that? Like, I'm just trying to think of, I think our staff, like everybody else has done a great job. What more can we do? I think we've made a commitment to have a park playground within 500 meters or something of every neighborhood, or close to a kilometer. I think we've made that commitment. So how much more can we do with recreational access? Do you have a suggestion on that?
Yeah, thanks, and through your worship, I think it's an excellent question. Part of what we bring here is, okay, how could we do that? I'd like the opportunity to sit down, I'm going to say, and at the same time commend the city because these are programs that are there. They've actually increased over the last 4 years, in part because we keep coming back sort of saying, hey, this is really important in this community. If we're going to provide the maximum opportunity for those children that don't have economic resources, where is that a barrier? So it's still a barrier in terms of transportation to get to these recreational opportunities. There's just one example that I can put out there. I think that we have some of the most progressive planning requirements in terms of 500 meters to a park and a kilometer to one that's got city playground in it. And so you won't find that in many OCPs. And so as I say, I actually do think the city's being progressive. There's still room for growth here.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gitt.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Hasselbeck. Thank you, Amber. Appreciate it very much. The UNICEF child-centered development, I would suggest, you probably agree with me, I don't have to question you, that bringing kids to a meeting like this is almost child abuse, the way our meetings go off, and the way we talk, and the things we talk about. That's why kids don't want to be involved. But there is an ability for child-centered development in our community that we can drive, and I think you agree with that. How many, and the language is great, it goes from international to central government, to local government, to community, to family. Of course, our recognition of family is changing, where it's grandma and mom and that, so there's different recognition now. But how many, and they say actors or institutions in Nanaimo are involved in the welfare of children? How many would there be, or accountable for that welfare?
In our partnership, we have 80 members and about 40 organizations.
Wow. So, and with that, because they're each a little entity and they have to report and act in that manner where all the reporting, they have to do their own individual reporting for each nonprofit or group and that, is there an overload on the amount of government extracted information that reduces the amount of time on the ground? Like, I'll say my new line is no one falls through the cracks, they just can't get into an office. So is there an overlap of management and administration where not as much is hitting the ground? Like, if we got 80 groups of adults meeting monthly in Nanaimo and they meet for 1 hour, that's 80 hours. They meet for 2 hours, it's, you know, it multiplies. Where they could be on the ground doing something versus meeting. Because that's a concern to me, kind of a governance model like Councillor Yoakum said and alluded to. We got a massive governance model, 80 organizations that are accountable for children fulfilling their rights. Seems like a lot. And don't get me wrong, the more, the better, but the more doing stuff on the ground level. Is that
Through your worship, I think the partnership actually only comes together once a year now in a day to actually look at what we've learned collectively. There's a small number of individuals who are a leadership team It's about 10 individuals, and I'd say on average, only half of them can make a leadership team meeting. This is the group that is trying to coordinate the efforts so that there is some sort of synergy occurring between the activities between different organizations. That includes the school district, the city, the health authority, CFD. So some of the big players are actually there making their best effort to come under one umbrella to be sure that we can keep children at the top of the agenda, and then we're all doing things together. One, to provide comprehensive service, and two, to be sure that we're not losing kids through those gaps. And we identify them and try to resolve them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Dr. Hasselback, and you too, Amber. The slide went by fairly quickly, but it was library use. And did you say that there was an increased number of children using the library? And did you also call for more work in that area? Wasn't sure.
No, actually, I think through the worship, it's a celebration of the success of the library system over the last few years. Really has shifted some of its emphasis and refocused its attention on trying to be a child-friendly type of environment. And they're doing a great job here in Nanaimo.
Thank you. I sit on that library board, so I was interested to hear what you said, because I know that we have tried really hard to open the library up. I went there last week, and it was some special day with the kids, and there was like so many kids. It was so noisy, so many grandparents, spring break, that it was just a pleasure to be there. And so I'm glad to hear that it's working.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your very in-depth presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is under 7A, Administration, and it's council appointments to the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel, to be introduced by Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Worship. This is a redo from March 19th meeting, and it's just to have council appoint at least 3 members and an alternate to the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. I was able to find out some of the answers to the questions that council had on March 19th, and they are in the report. As well, we changed the term ending to 2018 November 4th. So if council could just either volunteer or nominate 3 people and an alternate, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brennan. Okay, thank you. Councillor Thorpe. And I understand Councillor Armstrong had also volunteered? Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Recognizing, Ms. Gurry, that this is just a one event, do we have the date? One of the things that was holding me back was not knowing what the date is for an availability point of view.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Councillor Bestwick. Yeah, the date actually was an issue on March 19th when I brought the report forward because of AVICC. So the panel meets once a year, and it is Wednesday, April 11th at 2 p.m. So it's before you attend AVICC. We've changed that date.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got 3 names. Is there someone prepared to move a motion? Moved by Councillor Bestwick. Certainly. Is there someone interested in being an alternate?
I'm not available on the 11th.
No, but I think Jerry wants to, so I'll keep Jerry there again.
Councillor Hong, you're prepared to be an alternate? Yeah. Thank you. All right, so we have at this particular point to appoint Councillor Brennan, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Armstrong, and Councillor Hong as an alternate. Is there someone prepared to move that? Moved by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Yoakum. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So the next one is under committee recommendations. The first one is for Finance and Audit Committee from March 14th, 2018. Now, it's to be introduced by Councillor Bestwick. I'd like Councillor Bestwick to introduce the item And then we do have a delegation, Mr. Lawrence Repner.
Number one. So the Finance and Audit Committee at our meeting held March 14th recommended to council that the Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program recommends that council provide approval to establish a Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program, number one, and number two, to recommend Revitalization Tax Exemption Bylaw 2018, number 7261, to create a new Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program, pass three readings at a future council meeting, which is this evening.
Thank you. So we do have a delegation, Mr. Repner.
Reaper.
I'm sorry.
Lawrence Reaper.
Thank you, sir. You have up to 5 minutes. If we could have your name and address, please, for the record. Thank you.
Good evening. Downtown Revitalization Tax Exemption Program, DRTEP, yet another attempt to revitalize the downtown. Over the weekend, I learned of the above proposal and felt obliged to attend tonight's meeting to address you. I knew that the downtown area, as well as the old city area, had DCC exemptions that are to be replaced by the DRTEP. The proposed DRTEP area has the same boundaries as the DC exemption area. However, the maps are labelled Old City Neighbourhood. It includes part of Nanaimo Old City, the downtown core, Nob Hill, the northern part of South End community, north of Comox Road, and part of Bowen Park, it seems. Nanaimo Old City area boundary is from Victoria Road north to Comox Road and Wallace Street west to Howard Avenue. The northwest quadrant is zoned single family. The southwest quadrant, south of Fitzwilliam, a single family duplex and fourplex. The density increases and becomes commercial and multifamily the closer east it comes to Wallace Street. This is a well-established, successful and desirable community. While one accepts that the OCP supports development and revitalization of the downtown core, it does not include the adjoining Old City community. The Nanaimo Old City concept plan was given precedence over the OCP as an effort to preserve its integrity. Many heritage homes and buildings are included. Attachment A shows an incomplete heritage building register in the area. The proposal offers 10-year tax exemptions to builders of new multifamily 4 or more units and commercial buildings or renovations to existing buildings with a permit value of over $500,000, as well as some aspects of the Heritage Exemption Program, HTEP. There is no downtown neighbourhood plan. There is no downtown neighbourhood. Downtown is no more inclusive of Nanaimo Old City area than anywhere else in the city. The terms Old City neighbourhood and downtown are not interchangeable. One notes that the agenda of tonight's meeting already shows a recommendation to pass DRTEP, passed unanimously. Note that the first, second and third readings are requested to be passed. This is to be in effect by the 4th of April, I think. This is a very erroneous and obfuscated proposal. I do not understand the haste to bring this plan forward. The DCC exemptions, as far as I can see, had little to appeal to the neighbourhoods, particularly in Nanaimo Old City, as it was already built out. But this proposal seems to be an invitation to vested interests to attack and weaken the established neighbourhood zoning. I ask that the city have a dialogue with the neighbourhood groups, Noka, Nob Hill, South End, before any further action is taken. Please note that tax exemptions to one group come out of the pockets of other taxpayers. Let's not get started even on parking problems. This was written in haste, and I hoped that I have made myself sufficiently clear.
Thank you. Questions for the delegation? Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Mr. Reaper. You raised some valid. My apologies. Sorry. You raised some valid thoughts and musings indeed. And do I understand your concern to be the boundary?
Yes.
Of
why downtown includes Nanaimo Old City area, which is a residential area.
Okay, so, and I just want to try to understand you, because once we get to discussing and debating the three readings.
Well,
I need to understand.
It is tonight, as you just said.
I beg your pardon?
It is tonight, as you just said.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that I'm clear that your concern is with the boundaries and not the revitalization tax bylaw itself, just.
Not in itself, no. I mean, yes, as my comment at the end is, somebody else has to pay if you give a break. But yes, it is the boundaries, you're right.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Gurry?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to point out that actually the Finance and Audit recommendation is on the agenda this evening, but the bylaw, now that this recommendation, when this recommendation is passed by council, the bylaw will be on the next council meeting. So it actually won't be, you won't be doing the three readings for the bylaw until April the 23rd. I'm sorry about that confusion. It was confusing.
Thank you. Councillor Hong?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reaper. Just a question for you. Did you have a problem with the no DCCs rules that the city had been in place for the last decade?
I don't have a problem with it. Again, I don't think it was particularly relevant to the old city area, the residential area, because it's built out.
Okay, so
There aren't virtually any spare lots that haven't been developed.
So I think this was a similar program, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't this the same outline that we have where our DCCs fall into? So this is the exact same boundary that where the no DCCs were in place in the downtown core. So we just replaced, deleted no DCCs and put this tax exemption program in. So we've just swapped programs with the same boundaries. Did you know that?
But is it the same thing?
It is very similar to the same thing in the fact that this is geared towards commercial buildings. And I understand where you said that a lot of heritage houses weren't on this list, but heritage buildings
Well, mine
were.
isn't, for one thing.
Yeah, so the buildings were. So this isn't geared towards residential, but more towards commercial.
Yes, but nevertheless, why include the residential if it's not about the residential?
I think it was just in that area, and staff made it simple to leave it, if I'm not mistaken, is what we had that discussion.
But isn't that a little dangerous?
I wish it extended further, actually, down south to down Nicholas Street a bit more, because we have a lot of commercial on Nicholas Street.
Again, should there not be discussion with the various neighborhood groups?
Well, I think, and staff did say that each individual.
I don't
last
think
time.
they did.
Last time they said that we can each individually do each individual neighborhood area as well, if we opted to extend this program down south to South Nanaimo in that area as well. And I think we did have that discussion on why these boundaries. This is just a copy of what the old DCC boundary was.
It doesn't quite, in my opinion, read that way.
Okay, well, we'll ask staff for some clarification.
I'm particularly concerned about the old city, Nanaimo Old City area, I must admit.
Yeah.
I try to be accommodating to other areas, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
So this will be coming to the April 23rd meeting,
Okay.
if you wish to partake. Councillor Kipp has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Reaper. It's more of a confirming something. You have before concerned yourself with design guidelines for your neighborhood, that
Yes,
none
of
of them
course.
exist for the protection of those homes in that area. Am I correct?
Yes.
And also, though, within this downtown neighborhood, there are design criteria for commercial design, or the downtown design guidelines.
Yes.
So, but it's not equal to your residential area, is it? There's nothing to protect that residential area as far as design guidelines go, are there? So what I'm trying to say is...
No, you're right, sorry. It only applies to multis.
Yes, it would be nice to see a tax benefit for someone fixing or maintaining the character of the houses in that area, but you won't benefit from this tax.
No, not at all. So why are we included?
Why are you included in that? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. See no further questions for you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a recommendation from the Finance and Audit Committee to pass 3 readings at a future council meeting. Can we have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any further discussion? Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. As I understood that we would be bringing this forward at April 23rd now, I understand that, but do the council provide approval to establish a downtown revitalization tax exemption bylaw first, or no?
Mr. Lindsay can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the entire bylaw reading and the recommendations will be at the April 23rd meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
At that point, will we be able to affect the mapping in the area? Or would that have to be rewritten to the bylaw? Because the map is specific to this bylaw, what would be the ability to change? Because I understand the revitalization, giving people the ability for multifamily and for commercial and quasi-industrial or whatever we're having down there to revitalize, because we want that in the downtown core. So the mapping would be directly affected by any of the readings, would it not?
So, Your Worship, through to Councillor Kipp, the map certainly forms part of the bylaw. So to amend the map would be either at the time of first reading or an amended third reading. But yes, it would require a bylaw amendment. What I would note, though, is the the tax exemption revitalization bylaw is specific in what it applies to, and it says for 4 units or more of multifamily or commercial. So if, for example, there's a block within that area, within that polygon that has zoning that doesn't allow those uses, it would automatically not be eligible under this. So for ease of communication, we simply use the boundaries that were the same boundaries with the DCC exemption area when we brought forward the tax exemption bylaw. But by default, by the way it's drafted, there will be types of development like single family that are not currently eligible to participate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there's a motion been moved and seconded to endorse the recommendations of the Finance and Audit Committee. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, Bowen Road, corridor traffic signal coordination. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Am I on? Thank you. The Finance and Audit Committee recommend that council direct staff to allocate $22,000 of ICBC's road improvement funding to the Bowen Road Traffic Signal Coordination Plan, and that motion passed unanimously.
Do you wish to be the mover?
I'll move.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the questions. In favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Also, at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting of March 14th, the committee recommend that council direct staff to allocate $210,000 from water reserves for the construction of the College Drive water main upgrade project.
Okay. Are you moving that?
Yes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
The Finance and Audit Committee also recommended that council approve additional funding of $50,821.26 to complete the harborfront sprinkler replacement from the general parking reserves. So move.
And seconded by Councillor Hong. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
And in the next instance, the Finance and Audit Committee recommend that council direct staff to enter into a cost-sharing agreement with the developer of 525 3rd Street for the work and services to allocate. Do you wish me to read all of these out?
For the benefit of those who don't have them in front of them, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. $265,444 roads development cost charge, $50,000 private contribution, $74,250 water development cost charge, a $50,750 water reserves from the water reserves, and $59,556 from general reserves.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Hong. Any discussion? Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I wasn't at this meeting, so I don't know the answer to this, but it's not something I usually see, and it says private contribution, $50,000 private contribution. So can that be explained?
Mr. Lindsay? Mr. Sims?
Your Worship, that is from the developer that's participating in the project.
Thank you. That's what I suspected, but I really wasn't sure, and I don't think it's as clear as that's a little bit obscure. So if we could use developers' contribution, that would be more precise. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, would you wish for that, just a friendly amendment, for that to read developer contribution versus private contribution and be recorded as same in the minutes?
Ms. Curry?
Yes, we could amend it to that being the intention behind.
Without a vote or anything?
Yeah, that's okay. You already voted. It's okay.
Thank you. The next is item C, Advisory Committee Minutes, to be introduced by Councillor Bestwick.
So move the minutes of the audit committee meeting held in the boardroom on February 14th, 2018, 9 a.m. be received.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Hong. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is 9A. Under Public Services, Strategic Directions, Community Planning and Development Committee, to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay, Director of Community Development. Mr. Lindsay, you're on.
Thank you, Worship. This is the 2018 work plan for the Community Planning and Development Committee. The work plan is attached to your agenda, but in short, it includes the items of zoning and OCP amendments, the hospital area plan, Port Drive master plan, climate adaptation and resilience study, Woodgrove area plan, and OCP update background work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's a recommendation on page 21.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any discussion? Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks very much. Mr. Lindsay, 10 items, rather ambitious and robust list. Will there be timelines attached to each for completion?
Certainly, the timelines are not generated generally by the committee themselves, but by the staff work that's going on in parallel, or by work that's on other committees. So, for example, the first two items, which are OCP zoning bylaw amendments, those come forward as applications are made, and we bring them through the system. The hospital area plan and the Port Drive master plan are both plans that are currently underway by staff, and we've been updating the committee and bringing those forward, and we'll continue to do so. The other examples are similar in nature, in that those are works that are currently underway by staff or by other committees. And when I say other committees, I would note there's one on there for the cannabis task force. So the task force will do their work, but it would be a matter of updating the committee upon the completion of the task force work.
Thank you very much. And may I just indulge with one more question on number 7, the Woodgrove area plan? Could you just elaborate for me a little bit on what the Woodgrove area plan boundary would be per se?
Your Worship, in general terms, it would be the area sort of west of Uplands Drive, including all of the commercial core in around Woodgrove Mall.
Thank you. The reason I ask that, of course, is because there is some commercial development taking place just north of, I'll call it Canadian Tire, if you will, and we're getting residential and commercial, and we're getting considerable input as it relates to commercial development on that road where it's heavily treed and RS1 and as neighbors. So will it be inclusive of where the roundabout is and where new commercial properties or buildings are going to go?
Sorry, are you talking about the roundabout on Rutherford Road?
The roundabout, not far from Boston Pizza. Sorry, it's not a plug. I'm not trying to promote anybody.
Yeah, no, the Woodgrove boundaries wouldn't extend that far south, no.
It doesn't extend that far?
No.
Can I ask the question then, should it?
Your Worship, I'm just reflecting what's the current boundaries in the OCP. When we bring back the terms of reference for the plan, they'll ultimately be approved by council. If council wants to revise the boundaries, we can do so at that time.
And that's number 1?
Number 1 in terms of the steps.
Number 1 is the OCP amendment application.
So number 1 speaks to just general applications that are made by individuals But the Woodgrove plan, and as we do with any plan, the first stop would be in front of council with a terms of reference for that, which would include the boundary of that study area. So if council wanted to amend the boundary area, there's opportunity to do that at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. This looks very ambitious. Which one of these actually has funding or has been funded? Because I know that the hospital plan, if I'm not mistaken, was about 100,000 for that plan. So I understand that this is Community Planning and Development Committee, but what works are the actual committee doing, or what is being contracted out to different organizations to get this done? Because I know that some of these, I know that we put budgeted to, like liquor control strategy, Woodgrove area plan is in the budget, but the cannabis task force, I don't think we ever put a budget to that one per se, and all these other ones. So which ones are actually budgeted to be done by outside sources, and which ones are going to be done by this committee? Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Hong, so items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are all line items in your budget and are all funded. The remaining items would be largely staff time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The next one under 9B, Nanaimo Recycling Exchange Funding Options. So I have noted here that Mr. Sims will introduce this item. You don't have a presentation, though. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Your Worship, I'm just introducing the item that refers back to the council meeting on March the 12th, that we come forward with options to fund 6.05 million as a request for of the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. And of course, both Ms. Laura Mercer and Wendy Fuller are here this evening with any technical financial questions.
Thank you very much. So we have 3 delegations on this item. The first one is Mr. Ian Gartshore. 2 of the delegations will have 10 minutes. The third will have 5. Mr. Gartshore, you have 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes. And we need your address for the record, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. Ian Gartshore, 353 7th Street in Nanaimo. I'm glad to see this issue before you again. I was here 2 weeks ago addressing it. Where I want to go today is by talking about what you ended up with at the last meeting, which was business plan. How much, where's it going to be spent, what are the plans for the NRE, issues like that, which is very good. I own 2 businesses and I run a nonprofit counseling center in town, and we need to have some plan of where we're going. But really, do we know what's going to happen in the future? We can plan for it, we can do our best to think ahead, but do we really know what will happen in the world of recycling? I know that when the big one comes, the earthquake that's supposed to be a huge event, our business plans will collapse just as much as do bridges and buildings. So we don't really know the future, and even if we discard that and say it's not going to happen, do we know what will happen in any area? So, given that we don't know the future, we can only prepare for it, let's consider what the NRE has given to us. Let's go to the past, because we do know that history. And I'm going to go back even further than that, back to the 1970s, late 70s, when an organization called the Nanaimo Recycling Depot was first established. And that depot was the first in Western Canada, actually anywhere west, was the largest one eventually, that went door to door to pick up roadside collectibles, as well as extended the service eventually down to Saanich, and then went to multi-residential buildings, considerably ahead of plans being put in place now. They became the largest recycling center here in Nanaimo, west of Kitchener, Ontario. When the service was now established using a truck that was given to them, it was hobbled together very low-cost operation, the city decided that it was going to tender the contract. And it was given to a local company that I'm sure put together a business plan and said, we can do it for less money and a better service. They started and stopped 8 months later, saying, there's no way we can do it for this amount of money. And the business went bankrupt. We were left without any curbside recycling pickup for 3 more years. Now fast forward to the early 80s, when the regional district decided the garbage is just piling up. We're getting way more garbage than we can really handle. And so we need to think about the future, and the way that we think we're going to be able to handle that is by putting in an incinerator. And so the early 1980s, plans were put into place for a Dew Point. And it was local opposition that prevented that from going ahead. And that opposition formed what is now the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. The vision and the low-cost way of delivering the service that they have delivered to us since its inception in the 80s has been exemplary. And not only that, but it's given us a reprieve from the need for an incinerator. It's also given us the courage and the conviction and the enthusiasm, frankly, for all of us in our homes and offices and buildings, businesses, to go and recycle, whether it be at the NRE or any of the other outfits. Now we're going to go forward a little bit further. Because of the demand for recycling and for zero waste, the province was convinced to institute what is known as eco-fees. And the first time they put those into place, a corporation called Encon came into the province and was the one that was going to accept all of the recyclable bottles and cans. They are now renamed to Regional Recycling. It's the same company. Since then, they've added other eco-fees, and this company has benefited greatly from those fees, from us, the folks that go and buy these products. Those companies, that company and others, have been able to develop because of the public demand for recycling and for zero waste. The movement that began, called the Nanaimo Recycling Depot and now Nanaimo Recycling Exchange, all have created what it is that we have today, including these corporations that now help us. So we know that about the past, but what we don't know is how much has the the depot and the NRE, how much have they saved us? It would take somebody some considerable amount of effort to research that and come up with concrete numbers, but I'm going to start with one. The NRE accepts, or did accept, products that nobody else would take. Why? Because it costs money to recycle them. In fact, it costs them, in this last little while, $300,000 a year to accept products nobody else would. And sure, it's not a huge weight of products that were being recycled, lots of volume when it comes time to the foam products, but they did it for us for free, charging us not a penny for that service. So I did a little bit of simple math, $300,000. Well, for the NRA to do that, it would probably cost somebody else, such as the regional district, maybe $400,000 to do that because they don't have volunteer labor. They've got unionized, which is great, but it would cost them more. So let's take $400,000, multiply it by 25 years, very simple math, I know, that comes up to $10 million. They haven't saved us that much, but I'm just using some nice round numbers. They've saved us lots and lots of money. Let's go further. That whole movement that started them, that stopped the incinerator, how much does it cost to run an incinerator? Well, we know from other jurisdictions it's 4 times the amount per ton to incinerate garbage, recyclables, whatever, than it does to put it into a landfill or to recycle it. 4 times. So if that incinerator did come to be in the mid-'80s, how much money would we have paid to keep that going? Also keep in mind that incinerators have a contract that if we don't feedstock them enough, then they can't operate, and then the cost comes back to government. So that results from around the world, wherever there are incinerators, there's less recycling, because sometimes you have to send it off to the incinerator to keep the burner going. So our recycling rate would be lower. We wouldn't be going towards zero waste, which is the goal in this region, to go to 90% diversion. How much have we saved as a result of the movement that brought about the NRE? Millions? Certainly. Air quality? Absolutely. Where would we put the landfill for the toxic ash from that incinerator? Those are all questions that are unanswered, but I think need to be asked. So to think about the future of the NRE, the leader, the lowest cost leader probably on Vancouver Island in recycling, the one that has the vision to also now accept mattresses, another big bulk, not heavy, but very bulky thing for a landfill, to accept other products, to figure out how they could source materials that local companies could use that could hire local people and boost the local economy. That's now becoming a zero waste center, a waste recovery center. And that is the vision that they have, that nobody else who earns money recycling things, and Con and the others, will even dare to do, unless, of course, they come to you for money, or they come to us and say, open your wallet when you drop off your products to us. It's one or the other. While we've had this low cost, zero cost to the city, that's been working for us all these years. So my question to you is, if we do not have an NRE, has the city, knowing the last few years that this is going to happen if we don't put some money into it, has the city prepared a business plan to keep recycling at the percentage where it is and to go even further? Has the city considered what it's going to cost us if we don't have the NRE? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We have questions for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to have a business meeting here, please. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Just a question for you. You talked about N Corp. You saying it's a corporation, it's a private corporation. Is that what you were referring it to?
Yes, it's a federally registered company.
It's a federally registered, incorporated, not-for-profit product stewardship corporation with a beverage container management as our core business. Our mandate is to develop, manage, and improve systems to recover used packaging and end-of-life products from consumers to ensure that they are properly recycled and not landfilled. NCorp is committed to establishing good governance and best practices appropriate to an organization of our type. Our board of directors consists of representatives from the beverage and retail grocery industries, as well as directors who have no connection with either industry. So, like the NRE, they are not for-profit organization as well, just in a different form, where they can get contracts for money. If the NRE can do what they can do, they can take on these contracts from the Electronics Association of BC to get the recycling fees that NCorp has won. So they are a not-for-profit. I just wanted to correct you that they are not-for-profit.
Okay.
They're federally incorporated, not-for-profit organization. They're not. It's not a company out there. There is no shareholders. I can't buy shares in NCorp. There is no big man behind it. It is a not-for-profit as well. So I just wanted to correct you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. See no further questions, sir. The next delegation is Jan Hastings and Ben Gieselbrecht. Good evening. Again, name and address. Could be business address.
Pardon me?
Name and address for the record, please.
Jan Hastings, 2270 Jingle Pot Road. Had to think about that. I'm the executive director of Nanaimo Recycling Exchange. So First on my list to talk about is the business plan, because it is the topic right now. So I want to tell you that we've had various requests to come up with the business plan, and those documents are being gathered right now. I don't want to guess wrong. I want to talk to the people who've made requests and make sure I know exactly what everybody wants to see, and we'll put all that together and present it to you. For example, Councillor Armstrong had some very specific requests, and she wasn't available to meet, and so I'm waiting for that. So we will gather those documents. I also want to clear up, I think, confusion that I caused about providing the business plan and documents. My information for the RDN process, the RDN report, was that staff will collect all of the information and make the business case, and it was also made very clear by Chair Veenhoff that all the information was going in camera and needed to be protected, and so and that it needed to reach all the RDN directors at the same time, the exact same information that everybody would use to make the decision. So the advice to me was not to shotgun various documents and information around in response to requests, but was to put it through that report process. So if I followed that process too much to the letter, that was the reason, but the reason was never to withhold information. So to the people making the requests about the business plan, I'm offering an apology for that. We are happy to provide the documents requested, and we are putting them together. We just want to be 100% sure of what people want to see. So about that forthcoming business plan, the NRE has an established business plan. It's not designed for the purpose of building a facility and all of that stuff. And so it needs to be selectively summarized for what this request is. The business plan will now also include additional costs that we've incurred from this delay. It's been 8 or 9 months since we came to the city with an urgent request for some support. At that time, and even though timelines were still tight, at that time we had the ability to build and transition to a new facility with very minimal interruption of services and no interruption of revenue. So now the NRE is closed, there won't be revenue to support ongoing costs, which include our mortgage, storage and transportation of heavy equipment. I now have to find ways and means to do that. We're paying severance, relocation if that happens, and startup if that happens. So, and after building up reserves to cover our demolition costs, which will be $100,000, it was not possible to ensure reserves to cover long-term inactivity with no revenue. I've been asked to explain some points from the last meeting that were just not clear. There was confusion about why the current ask of $6.05 million is lower than the RDN ask. And that's because the RDN was not going to pursue any request that didn't include purchase of the land. What we brought to you is the cost of the building only, and we will carry the mortgage on the land, and that's where 6.05 is lower than the RDN number. Another point of confusion was the reason why the NRE can't consider $300,000 from the RDN offer that came out of the solid waste management plan. That money is allocated as a fee for service only, and that funding is not for capital projects. The NRE is now closed. We are formatting the business plan to match the request, and we'll present it to you as soon as we have all those documents ready. So in the meantime, we are asking that council receive the staff report tonight and defer decisions about the funding request to the NRE until we have that document, until it's presented to you and you have the information you've been asking for.
Good evening, council, mayor, and staff. My name is Ben Gesselbrock, and I'm the vice chair of the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange Board. As you are probably well aware, we had to close our doors to the public for the first time in 25 years last Tuesday. Over 7,000 residents have voiced their support for the NRE, and I imagine you've had a flood of emails over the last week asking what the city is going to do. With a flow of 800 to 1,500 cars a day, there is currently a lot of recyclable material that is now being either brought to landfill, stored at home, dumped illegally, or inefficiently dropped off at various locations, with a large portion still being brought to landfill. The closure of the NRE was inevitable without sufficient and timely funding. This has been an issue we've all been aware of and have been unsuccessful in solving for about 5 years now. We're asking for $6.05 million of capital funding to build a facility designed to recycle the waste of today and tomorrow. Our proposed facility is the most cost-effective design possible while still adhering to provincial and municipal building regulations. Our new facility reflects the efficient one-stop drop operational model that, unlike any other service that has been offered to date in Nanaimo, is capable of dealing with the hard-to-recycle and toxic household materials. While our community is transitioning from a simple just throw it out culture, it's really essential to incentivize the public to recycle by making it cheap, easy, and educational. A centrally located nonprofit one-stop drop provides this critical incentivization. This is because it is the most convenient and low-cost option for the individual taxpayer. What is important to understand is that it is still cheaper to ship many materials to landfill than it is to recycle them. This makes a competitive for-profit business case for one-stop drop recycling impossible. Without a need for profit, the NRE can use its surplus towards lowering the cost to recycle hard-to-recycle and toxic items and pioneer new ways to collect and manage previously unrecyclables. Our education programs and long history of supporting recycling for the good of the community also allows us to mobilize public participation like none other. Although we believe a fully publicly funded one-stop drop recycling facility like the 3 built in the Cowichan Valley is what the city should do, the NRE is offering the city a much more cost-effective method of providing the service where all the hard work of developing pretty much everything has been done. We have a secured through ownership rare centrally located industrial 2-zoned land. We have a fully costed and permitted architectural design with a highly respected contractor. And most importantly, we have an efficient, low-cost operational model with a flow-through of 800 to 1,500 cars a day. The opportunity to take full advantage of these cost savings through the 25 years of hard work by the NRE is quickly disappearing. This is especially true when considering that without the revenues from our operations, the mortgage on the land we have secured will be impossible to service. We are asking the city for $6.05 million in capital funding to build a facility suitable to provide a comprehensive service for non-curbside recycling. It appears this funding is possible and would come at a very small annual per household cost. We have listened to the need from some council members for a business plan to help them make their decision, and for that reason, the NRE has been working hard at collating this information. In closing, the NRE board requests that any decision regarding funding for the NRE be postponed until the NRE presents our business plan to council. This is so we as a community can have a clear understanding and discussion of the costs and opportunities involved in securing a one-stop drop, zero-waste recycling service in Nanaimo. Thank you for your time and continued consideration of this matter.
Thank you. We have questions. Councillor Holland.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm excited to see that you're working on a business plan. Can you kind of outline roughly what's going to be in business plan? Because the way that recycling is moving now and in the direction that seems to be taken from what I hear, the city of Calgary, a few others across Canada are having issues with what they're doing with the recycling because there's no demand for it. Essentially, is it correct that because we have Recycle BC, our product is still viable for China. Other markets, China has turned away. Is that correct? That's the first question.
Could you repeat the question, please? I want to make sure I get it exactly.
Because of what Recycle BC does and our ability to sift through contamination, are our products from BC still being accepted in China? Or are they also being rejected, as far as you know?
Recycle BC is having definite challenges, but they recycle a lot of their plastic, for example. One of the things Recycle BC did when they started up is put $20 million into Merlin Plastic in the Lower Mainland to process plastic. And so they're not accepting at Merlin raw plastic and then trying to market it. They're pelletizing it right there, and it's much more marketable. So that was done from the get-go. Some of RBC's fiber does go to Japan, but they have a diverse, they kind of try to spray it all over the globe so that one market doesn't affect their whole operation. So, where that goes in the future, I don't know.
Thank you. So then just to follow up on that, previously, I know that, is it correct that you were getting paid for taking stuff to Cascade? Now, are they starting to charge for products in some areas, for instance? I'm worried about what is going to happen with the city and what we're doing with our recycling, if that's going to increase our user rates, because that's going to be a question through staff. But from your perspective,
I need
has
to
that
just
changed?
correct something, if I may. The NRE doesn't take stuff to Cascade. I have select markets that I have researched and worked on. They are the markets that need us to be on our hands and knees, hand sorting, 0% contamination. Those are different markets.
Thank you for that. And that's, I think, where we're going to go with our staff and where our recycling is going to go. And I think that's the question that we talk about, how our business plan for what our rollout of recycling was going to be. I think the residents are going to be shocked to find out that it's probably going to be quite a lot more for user fees.
Can I make one more point? There's two distinctions to be made when stuff gets hard to recycle. One, it's still recyclable, it still can be recycled, you just might have to add some dollars to that.
Pay for it.
There's very little that actually cannot be processed at all or recycled at all. So I find the markets where people will say, yeah, I'll take that and I'm going to charge you some money for that.
Yeah.
It's different from a for-profit model.
Great, thank you for that. Okay.
Councilor Kipp.
Thank you for the tireless effort you guys have done for 25 years. Trust me, I've lived through it, and I appreciate the fact that you're working hard. I'm going to tell people on this one, do you have any bylaws like Sweden where we ban styrofoam? Have you looked at that, where we ban styrofoam? Ban it, stop it. Sweden has banned styrofoam. They don't want to take it as a country anymore.
I missed the beginning of your question, sorry. Do we have...
Have you any research into how Sweden banned styrofoam?
No, haven't had time for that one.
Well, but that's where you're looking at markets, so you're also looking at not having markets too.
We get told, and we try to do a lot of that thinking through the Solid Waste Management Planning Committee, and we just get told that it's really hard for our government, local, provincial, whatever, to ban business. You can't ban business because people want to make money and people want to make profit, regardless of the impact on the environment. So what the NRE can do is I can hold up two sources of packaging, two types of packaging to our residents in Nanaimo. I can say, this one's recyclable, this one isn't. Buy this one. And they go, okay, that's all I ever wanted to know.
Well, see,
we will work on it upstream, as upstream as we can get, which is education.
But see, that's what I'm saying too. When NRE first started and Nanaimo Against Garbage, and I'll question some of Ian's timing, but you were doing that education and you're going out there and doing it.
Yeah.
When I drive through your facilities, the times I've gone through, and I don't take much stuff there, I haven't seen as much education because it's so busy and so free for everyone. And garbage is not free. So from that perspective, I understand, but The price and the arbitrage of garbage is huge now. And to exist, you need garbage. If we were down to zero waste, there'd be no NRE, because we wouldn't have the waste. We wouldn't be creating it, we wouldn't be accepting the lifestyle that creates this mess. Can you tell me the volume of your materials that go to Cascade? How much has gone to a Vancouver recycling company, and what percentage has been going to the landfill?
One, we don't send anything to Cascades. Two, we don't collect garbage, so we don't send things to the landfill.
No Cascade bins get filled at your place?
We don't send recycling to the landfill, we send garbage to the landfill, that the RDN provides that service, that tip service for free. So if we end up, for example, from the reused market with stuff at the end that just won't move, and we can't recycle it, we can't resell it, we can't do anything with it, that's the only garbage we have, which goes to Cedar Landfill.
Okay, thanks. So some of your product does that. And can you tell me, I've heard the percentage that you handle 0.1% of the garbage in Nanaimo. Is that a true figure?
Okay, I don't know where that number came from. And so
you have that, so it's a...
my bottom line is, if you're looking at us and telling us the NRE doesn't recycle enough, I'm going to agree with that, because I'm standing here telling you we don't recycle enough. We have to recycle more. You can't measure that by what we keep out of the landfill right now. We need to do more.
Well, if I can continue along, I mean, when I hear the term diversion, so we've diverted our green, all of our green bins that are really not a green bin, it's a brown bin, until now we start adding the green into it. Yeah, we've diverted it from our dump, but we've put it out to a different landfill. It's just a different place filling land. And we're trying to do, and the term was great, the feed lot type mentality. Now organic waste, if they have to expand and go to the future that we don't know, they want guaranteed amounts for that diversion. So, and we can't divert to China anymore. But I appreciate what you're doing, but I just want, and now as Ben said, been working on this for 5 years, right? And now we're doing a business plan. So I like to see the dollar value, the social value, the environmental value, and the governance and the operation. So there's the 4 pillars I'm working with, not just price, not just environment, not just social, but all together. So just we've known this is going on for over 5 years, this whole council term, this has been going on, and the lease has got nothing to do with the city of Nanaimo. And the land you bought has got really nothing to do with the city of Nanaimo.
You guys are on the wrong side of history.
Ma'am.
You guys are on the wrong side of history.
Never. I haven't been so far.
Ma'am,
so for me,
you're going to have to leave.
Just ignore it. So for me, we have to do this properly.
Council, question, please.
Well, the question is, you don't know the percentage you keep out of the landfill. I don't know the volumes you have in what is going of garbage, or how much goes out of there. And I've concerned myself with waste for decades. And I'm concerned that we're not doing enough. We're never doing enough. But it's also, the province says it's a regional issue for us. And 1,500 cars a day driving all over Nanaimo to drop off the 6 bottles and a few styrofoam things, that's not an environmentally sensitive methodology.
You've heard that one before.
Ma'am.
And you'll hear it again, pal. Thank you. No question. I've got no more questions.
Thank you. There are no more questions for the delegation. No more questions. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next one is Mr. Craig Cookman. And you have 5 minutes, sir.
So my name's Craig Cookman. I live at 198 Crossbow Drive in Nanaimo, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Vancouver Island Recycling Waste Industry Coalition. We as a group felt it important to speak tonight to let you all know we as a group are not opposed and are very appreciative of the services that the NRE offers by way of an educational platform and a teacher within the community promoting and teaching around the 3 Rs. But we as a group, together, all currently can and are ready, willing, and able to accept all of the products that are currently being dropped at the NRE, and feel that the funds, any funds being moved towards that operation would be better served. For example, look at the first delegation that spoke this evening around the children, and/or a couple of big items for me personally in the city, homelessness and the drug overdose deaths. On the 12th, when we came to the council meeting and saw what went on here, it really hit home for me personally, and we just wanted to bring that up, thinking that that is a better use of funding at this point in time. Back to the Vancouver Island group that we've put together, we'd be the first to acknowledge we maybe have not done the best job in marketing and promoting our services and ourselves. I wanted to also mention that this Thursday we're having a meeting with local radio, newspaper, and a couple other media outlets to work on that with the recent closure of the NRE. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one point, Mr. Cookman. I heard what you said about homelessness and forget the other issue that you, and children. But you're not proposing that we can only do one of those things. You're not proposing that if we do the recycling, we can't cope with homelessness. If we do the recycling, children will lose because we won't spend that money on them. You're not suggesting that?
Not suggesting. I'm
Thank you.
talking about priorities, I guess.
But choosing one priority over another at this time, you are talking about can't do two at the same time. Sounds like it to me anyway. Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So on Thursday, are you guys, is what I'm hearing from you is the private guys are willing to step up to take on temporarily, for sure, forever, with what's happening with the NRE? What's the game plan for you guys? Is it just to alleviate the pressure until, I guess, the NRE is requesting us to defer this until something comes up for the business plan? Is that what you're asking, or what's the plan?
No, we currently, between all of us, do accept the items that the NRE is accepting now and have done so. And it's not a short term. We don't see it as a short term thing. It's for the long term.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Councillor Fuller.
You mentioned taking all of the products that the NRE takes right now, that you guys are willing to do that. Where would those products go? Because I notice there's a mountain of styrofoam at the NRE. So would you stockpile that as well?
No, that Cascade would accept that and stockpile. To your question, there was a question earlier around recyclable products. Currently in North America, with the changes to the Chinese markets, there are 7 million tons of recycled products trapped in North America.
Wow. Yeah, that just blew me away. I just forgot the question I was going to ask you, so I appreciate the answer.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Why does business differentiate on a costing? They say it's a fee for service for the business, but when it's a nonprofit, you want to call it a subsidy. Why would that happen? I've heard that terminology from your organization, or a few of the people. So it's really just a fee for service at either level, is it not? Or a subsidy to business, or a subsidy. It does, because I like the idea. I hear business say, well, it's a fee for our service, but it's a subsidy for a nonprofit, but they're giving the service. Do you have a difference in that in your mind?
I guess where you're going with the subsidy portion, I'm not differentiating between the two there. With if it's a private business receiving the income or a not-for-profit, you're saying it's the same?
It's the same, is it not?
Not if it's provided by
Well, if government pays your company, your private company, a fee for service, and I pay the nonprofit a fee for a service, why would it be a subsidy? Because we're still giving you a fee for service, and we're giving them a fee for some service they're providing. And that's why I'm having trouble differentiating in the business model of recycling and garbage, of how it's viewed as a different entity, where it's not doing the work. It's just that the directors aren't making money, though. Top guy in the company isn't making the money. It's kept into the corporation. So I sense that you have a difference between a fee for service for a business and calling it subsidy for the nonprofit.
In the situation you described, I think it would be the same, but.
Appreciate that. There's a but there. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you, and that is, would you not, in today's world, consider that recycling and reuse is an ever-moving target?
Completely agree.
Would you not suggest that it's extremely difficult for anyone, nonprofit or for-profit, to develop a concrete business plan that you could guarantee to be living by 10 years down the road?
Yes, 10 years, yeah, I could agree with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, we have no further questions for you. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. So, is anyone prepared to move the recommendation? Council? Councilor Brennan.
So what I would like to do, instead of moving this receive for information, I'd like to receive the information, refer it back to staff so that a discussion can be held with the NRE regarding the business plan, which we've been asking for. So it seems to me that they're saying to us, we're going to have one for you, that it's kind of incumbent upon us to sit down and look at it with them. So I guess if you'll indulge me, I guess my motion would be that we receive the information in the staff report and refer it back to staff for further discussions about the NRE's business plan.
Here's your seconder. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe.
I do that because, as I made the motion, I think I can speak to it. I do that because the NRE is preparing it. We've asked for it. We don't know what their business plan is. So given all those things, we need to sit down and look at that business plan.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. And I also like that for staff to look at, because you're getting numbers for us that's associated with tax numbers and our current user rates on the future of recycling and what's going to move. Like I said, it is a moving target, and the changes that are happening right now, I think these numbers that we're predicting are probably not accurate. So I like to know where recycling is moving, because that was going to be one of the motions coming out of this, was to figure out if we are still on target for the user rates that we're projecting for the public in the next 5 years, or if it's going to change because of the new regulations that have come out with regards to recycling and how hard it could be to find homes for those and fees going up to process that. Like Ms. Hastings says, there's always going to be a market you can find. You might just have to pay more. And I'd like to know if that's going to be the case with our bins that are going to affect our user rates. Thank you. So that's an amendment to the motion to get their business plan, and I'd like to see what our user rates are going to be as well. If we're going to send staff back to look at that, I'd like to see how that's going to impact, because we're not going to be able to make a decision if our user rates are going to be inaccurate.
I think you've gone outside the scope, to be honest with you. So, Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. In the interim, you done, Jerry?
Yeah.
In the interim, the question I have for yourself, the staff, would be whether where we are today is where we are today, but if things went the way NRE wished earlier or hoped for, they would have a transition plan. So is that transition plan going to kick in? Because there would have been a window, like let me rephrase this. Whatever the transition phase would have been, is there a way for that to happen today, till we decide? Or is it, because right now they're asking for a new building only, not only 6.05 million. So nevertheless, operationally, it sounds like there's dollars there to run. So a question I have, if anyone, if are able to answer, can the transition take place as they move into their makeshift shop in the interim till whatever happens? Because the buildings, basically to me, I don't need it. The business plan to me now comes down to they want a building and how is it going to be funded? Because right now the question is we're not really diving into how the business plan is strictly down to a capital asset. How are we going to pay for it? And B, are they going to pay it back, a mortgage, a piece of it over time, or is it strictly in lieu of like granted a gift? I'm over the map here, so I'll backtrack. Where were they going to go today if everything was rubber stamped? And I'm not saying it's a grill in here. I just need the process here. Does anyone know where they were going to go today in the interim if this was all rubber stamped? Yes, a month or so ago, because the Toyota lease was no secret it was coming up. I'm asking staff.
Okay, the mover of the motion actually would like to contribute.
Well, Ms. Hastings said that had they not had to shut down the reserves, and with all of the costs of shutting down and storage of the things they have, they would have had the reserves to fund themselves over the transition period from now until they could move into the new building. So they had that money ready to go to help them through this transition period from no new building to new building. But because we haven't made a decision, they have had to, haven't made a timely decision, they have had to shut down and then pay extra fees, storage, if the staff has to be laid off, severance, those kinds of things. That money was there, but the purpose of that money was to assist through the transition period. It can no longer be used for that because other more compelling expenses have come up. But this is a result, make no mistake, this is a result of us having not made a clear decision, I think.
Okay, since I have the floor, may I just I respect there'd be costs, but nevertheless, there must be a site located, and I'm assuming that site would still be available, and I can't see those, we all know construction would be 6+ months, possibly more to a year for a new building. Because a renovation in my office took 8 months just for a $600,000 project. So nevertheless, that opportunity still must be there, and I'm like I said, I'm exploring here. I'm trying to be creative here. I'm not to be debating this. So but it's not matching up to me. And I feel like now, since apparently council didn't make a decision in time, this has been going on 5 years and we don't have a business plan, but nevertheless, I won't get into this debate. I'm not here to debate. I had some questions for my own thinking. Thank you, staff, for delivering.
So I think if I could, with respect
Mr. Sims wants a response.
to the questions that Councillor Yocum and Hong are asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think council is looking for an exploration of some of the emerging risks that we need to analyze as well. Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think that's a good way of phrasing it, is an emerging risk and what's happening with overseas markets and so on. But through you to Councillor Yocum's questions, staff, together with the regional district staff, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Gardner is going to be presenting a little bit on the solid waste management plan later this evening. But we're working together on, and with the private depots, to get communication out there as a result of the closure of the NRE. So we're ramping that up, making it a little more noisy so people can sort of reorient their own patterns of behavior.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Is this a referral, or are we talking about going back? Because it's a referral, so we shouldn't be really talking about it. We should just vote on it.
I agree. Good point, Councillor. Thank you. I'm going to call the question then to refer. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Bestwick opposed. Motion carries. The matter has been referred. Next item, Park Avenue and 8th Street. Under other business? Okay, thank you. Next item, Park Avenue and 8th Street, road, sidewalk, and utility cost share. It's going to be introduced by Mr. Paul Rosen. Go ahead, Mr. Rosen.
Thank you, Your Worship. The item that council has in front of it right now is a cost share opportunity for a development at 425 8th Street. So what we have there is an active development that's in the middle of, or in the process of developing their site. As part of their work or their development, they're required to complete works and services on both 8th Street and Park Avenue. With the works and services on Park Avenue, they'll be constructing a new road, sidewalk, curb, streetlights, and so on. And they'll be building that over top of an existing city-owned AC water main that was built in the 1970s. And also there's an existing lot between their works and services on Park Avenue and 8th Street that will be about a 30-meter gap in the sidewalk and the upgraded road. So the opportunity is for the city to cost share with the developer to complete a replacement of the water main that'll be underneath the new road and to infill the 30-meter gap in the sidewalk and the road upgrade at the same time. So that's the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Is there someone prepared to move the motion?
I'll move that. Seconded then.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Brennan, and Councillor Bestwick. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Rosen. It indicates in our report that there's three options, and option one is an option for a cost share opportunity with the developer. So the two bullet points that I make reference to is the $80,000 from general reserves and $80,000 from our water infrastructure funding. Is that, when we say partner, are they matching funding? Are they contributing to the funding somehow to close the gap, per se, that we're talking about closing? So when we do say partner, what, beyond what they're already doing, they're developing the property, they're doing what they're doing, what are they partnering with us? I see we're contributing $160,000 from two reserves. How are they partnering with us?
So through your worship to Councillor Bestwick, so the development is required to complete their works and services at their cost. So we have an opportunity to reconstruct the water main, which essentially will be underneath the new road that they're building.
Go ahead.
So the opportunity isn't that there's, like the developer is not obligated to construct the water main. It's already an existing water main. It's a city asset. So it's an opportunity for us to renew that infrastructure before the developer builds a new road over top of it. If we don't partner with the developer on this, the water main will stay as it is. With old water mains like that, there's a risk that, you know, with the road construction over top of it, it will break at some point in the foreseeable future, and we will have to reconstruct it and rip up the new road. So it's sort of a missed opportunity if we don't partner with them on this. But the developer isn't responsible for the water main. It's just a chance to complete the work at the same time.
Thank you. So I guess it's just a play on words for me. Partnering usually to me means that I got some skin in the game and it's all good. They're developing it anyways, and they could live off of what the water main is. So we'd like to improve the water main as it exists today. So while the construction's going on, it makes sense for us to take advantage of the opportunity to do this work while they're doing their work. That's the partnership. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Bestwick, so the partnership aspect of it is that we would be using the same engineering consultant that the developer is, the same contractor, the work would be done at the same time. So it's not that the developer and the city are cost sharing on the water main, it's that we're partnering in the process. So the engineering and the construction of it.
The construction's going on, instead of at a later date.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'll certainly support this, and I'd just like to comment that this is, I think, a good example of I'll call it long-term planning on the part of our staff, and full credit to them for recognizing an opportunity to piggyback projects, get the water main renewal done, get the road upgrades done, get the sidewalk improvements done all at the same time, save money, I'm sure, and save possible duplication down the road. So I'll certainly support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. When we're getting a development, this subdivision of the property and the works and services were started over 2 years ago. I believe it was about a year and a half process. Do we at that point, like when we call this a partner agreement, all we're trying to do is get our work in before they put the sidewalk down. So we're getting in there. We should, every time we have a development that's improving the property, we should be getting in and doing that. So I'm wondering, is it really necessary? Must you come to us on this? Because if it wasn't planned along with this Park Avenue 8th Street development, we're now having to speed it up, so it wasn't part. So when somebody's doing a subdivision, we're not looking to improve the assets as they're digging. And this is this sounds like a partner. I don't think it's a partnership. We're just getting in before they put the sidewalk down. We tried that in Bowen Road, and then BC Tel come along after the Bowen Road subdivision, or Bowen Road sidewalk got put in, and then 3 months later they wanted to tear it up, and people don't like that. No one wants their tax dollars done to this. So what is our process when this subdivision goes through? Do our engineers check and say, we got to fix that pipe, so let's get that in the budget? Or is it this came up and we thought, oh, we should spend $160,000 to do that now? Because whenever you do a little stretch of pipe, the next pipe to it, like Cavan Street, just keeps busting. You put a new part in a car and it busts the next old part. So when we fix this little stretch, that's only that's not even, I don't know how far it is, but don't we plan these all the time with every subdivision approval?
Through your worship to Councillor Kipp, so every development that comes through crosses the desk of the engineering staff, and they review the adjacent infrastructure that's there, and they identify requirements like this water main that may require renewal. The challenge is related to the timing of developments. So this development's been on the books for quite a while, as I understand it. So when we set up our budgets, they're typically set up a year and a half in advance of when we spend the money. So a 2018 budget, we would have set that up in the early half of 2017.
And this wasn't on the books.
So the challenge is knowing the timing of these developments can be very difficult because a lot of development operates on a much shorter time frame than we do for our budgets. So that's the reason why we're in front of council tonight asking for this specific one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, covenant amendment application number CA7 at 4745 Ledgerwood Road, to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Brennan, can you assume the chair, please? No, Councillor Brennan, can you assume the chair, please?
Do you need to move the motion?
I'll just briefly introduce it through the chair. This is an application that was before you last Monday night, and at the time council referred it back to staff. There were some specific questions raised regarding the community contribution. It was a rezoning of these lands that was done a number of years ago, and at the time it was secured for $400 a door. The applicants have come forward now and they're asking for the actual density in the covenant to be increased from 114 to 120. So in response to that referral back, staff have worked with the applicant and they've agreed to increase the community contribution from $400 to $1,000 per door, in keeping with council's current policy, and to direct that money towards the Housing Legacy Reserve Fund. And this item is simply for your consideration, as the next step is to go to the public hearing.
Move the motion.
Second.
Councillor staff to proceed with the public hearing and covenant amendment application CA7 at 4745 Ledgerwood Road.
Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Hong. Any questions, discussion?
Yes, please.
Councillor Besswick, do I just push it?
I should be on. I should be on.
Yes, it's on. It's okay.
Okay, great, there you are.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. The community contribution is for all 120 units, not just the 6 from 114 to 120?
That is correct, for all of the proposed units.
And which public hearing will this come to us in, April or May?
I believe, through your worship to Councillor Bestwick, I believe that we have sufficient time to make the May public hearing now.
For April, sorry?
Or April public hearing now, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
No, I was on, I'm just.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. It's now 6:24. We have other items coming up under other business, including a speaker, Mr. Storson. I would suggest that perhaps council recess now for 10 minutes. We're in recess. So it's now 6:24, make it 6:25, so now 6:35 we'll return. Mr. Sims, can you advise council that we're about to start? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So, we don't have quorum at the moment, but we were about to. I'm going to need the clerk to help me wade our way through all of this. The first one I have is Mr. Greg Storensen, under other business. Good evening, sir. We'll need your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Your Worship and council members. My name is Greg Sorensen. I live at number 3577 6th Street in the Harewood University Area District. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm here today as a speaker representing our community of the Sunnybrook Estates and in and around the area. We'd like to talk today about some of our concerns regarding the Georgia Greenway project. We're not saying no to the project, but what we'd like to do is to pause. The reason behind pausing is that we as a community have some concerns about the size of the project and its impact on the Greenway. Seeing that as it is a Greenway, we would like to do a minimum amount of damage to the environment. At present, they've already started the project and have started the alleyway, which is right behind my house and several other houses. We are very concerned about the direction that the bridge is taking and the size of the bridge, and that they plan to cut down one very large maple and 2 large cottonwoods, as opposed to keeping the project green and either incorporating the actual large trees and the environment, or going around them. The trees along the Chase River play an important role in the ecosystem all year long. They provide shade and protection for many of the Chase River creatures that live in and amongst the trees on the river. The trees also provide a natural visual barrier and reduce some of the noise that emanate from the park. We'd like to re-examine the bridge placement, its size, and again, as I mentioned, to incorporate them into the Greenway and keeping the space green. We were also told originally that there were no other options explored. We have since learned that there have been 3 other options, or 3 total options, and one of these options would save the trees, and as well, these options were ignored. So we now once again ask for a pause so that we can have a chance to examine these other options and see what and how they will impact the area. At present, we've asked for the other options, and we're not able to acquire them, as we were told they don't exist. Unfortunately, just tonight, someone did show me the options, and this is the first time I've seen them, about 5 minutes of walking into this room. We thank you very much and look forward to hearing your thoughts on taking the steps to keeping the Nanaimo green.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Fuller.
You said there were 3 options, but you were told there was only 1?
That is correct.
Okay. Through you to staff, could we get sent details of all of the options that were put forward for the George Avenue Greenway? I'd like to see them if there's 3. If there's a way to save trees, that'd be quite handy.
Thank you. So any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
I would expect that that question would be to staff. Mr. Sims.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sort of anticipating this question, we pulled some of the sketches. We have a draft report that was prepared by Herald Engineering, who's the consultant on the project. In early 2017, Herald Engineering started the design for the Georgia Greenway project. As Council's aware, this is one of your priority projects. It's been sort of on the books for quite a while, envisioned in the neighborhood plan. And it's a 4-meter wide pathway and a crossing over the Chase River. So this is one of the option 1, and this is the one that's been currently designed. But I think we've all had the same reaction as, wait a minute, why are we attacking these big trees? Because as the delegation mentioned, 2 very large dogwoods, 1.2, 1.4 meters in diameter. It's quite large. That's the, why would we want to touch those? So when we had the final survey and we sort of placed everything in, we stopped the project. We stopped the design work last summer and asked Harold to review. And so, Mr. DeRoche, if you could please just, so you saw number 1. So we looked at a couple of different other options as well. On the left side of the screen is north, and the south side is on your right, and that's the new Harewood covered space in the big dark gray. So one of the options that we looked at is let's get the bridge away from the trees. And we place it right on top of an existing 42-inch diameter storm outfall, which presents challenges not only for construction but future maintenance of that. That would certainly deal with one of the maple trees. We'd still need to take out one of the maples. There was the potential to save one of the cottonwoods. The other one was likely coming out. So Mr. DeRoche, one more, please. Another option was sort of pushing it away from the cottonwoods. Again, the maple's affected. Call it the furthest cottonwood away, still presents a risk to not only the bridge but also pedestrians or cyclists on the bridge. So one of the things that we did was involved a contractor. So as an independent review, a contractor that's no longer in the business but has extensive experience. So he wouldn't be bidding. There's not a sort of a conflict there. So we said, what options do we have? What constructability options do we have to save these trees? And his comment was in all 3 instances, there was a potential to save one of the cottonwoods, except for option 1, of course. That's the one that's further away. But his comment was, in order to swing the bridge in and the size of the crane that you'd need, it would likely be a fair bit of trimming and a fair bit of hacking back. So it was kind of like we're either getting 3 trees or rid of 3 trees, or we're getting rid of 2.5. So saving half a tree was kind of the comment that came back from him. A couple of other notes on the options review was that through the neighborhood planning process, one of the loudest messages we heard was the crime prevention aspect of the pathway, providing a straight visual for police as they're cruising the area. And so that was kind of folded into the analysis. So there's one more graphic that we looked at sort of all of the options. So this is the impact to the various categories of considerations that we had. So of course, option one has the highest impact to the trees, but lesser effect on all of the other compared to the other two options. In the end, the consultant recommended going with the one main option. Currently, I guess what I would say is we're kind of running up against the bird nesting window. We have, April the 1st is kind of the deadline where trees need to come down, which is why it's active now. We're also out for tender with the balance of the project. So it's a gamble to delay things any longer as if we want to complete the work this year. So that's kind of and I apologize to Mr. Sorensen for not having been able to make this available to him a little bit earlier, and I'll have a look at that and understand that, why that didn't happen, other than I think that a lot of the information that we have was in draft. Just finally, the costs on just the bridge alone. Option one was about $450,000. That's within our budget, and the other two are in the range of $690 for option two or $635, I think, for option three. So I think that's about it. I can answer any questions. I've kind of skimmed across a lot of that analysis. But.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fuller. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sims. In your presentation, did you say that the width is 4 meters?
That's correct, yes.
So approximately 13 feet. And where X marks the spot, I think it was a slide previous on the one tree that could potentially be lost. Is that a maple? What is that tree? So that one where the X is on there?
I believe that's the big leaf maple, yeah.
Big maple tree. So when we speak to, the safety and so on and so forth, but if we were to go just hypothetically, and I'm just trying to, if it was 8 feet wide in that section and not 13, so 8 feet is still considerably wide. 13 feet is lovely. Might even have a right turn lane on it, I'm not sure, but it's a pedestrian bridge that's probably going to be posted at both ends so that you can't drive a truck or a car through there and bikes can get through there. So for me, just looking at it, I go, okay, well, it's 8 feet at the north end or whatever the end that is, and it widens to 13 feet as you proceed across the bridge. And you can see through the, I read the thing there where, well, the RCMP for SEPTED, well, an 8-foot width is pretty good wide width to watch through there if they need to or whatever. Anyway, my point is, if we have to move over 4 or 5 or 6 feet and we still have a canopy with some hangings, that's kind of nice actually. So I don't know why we couldn't just make it a little bit narrower, 8 feet, 9 feet, 6 feet. Traffic calming at the one end. So I would strongly encourage us to reduce the width to save the tree.
Thank you. Councillor Hong, and I need to remind the gallery that we are in a business meeting here. It's hard to concentrate when we've got comments coming from the gallery. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I'm kind of in the same mind as Councillor Bestwick, because I look at the bridge that we have downtown McPhail Sutton Park going over that little piece. Is that going to be about the same length of bridge as that swinging bridge that we have down there under the Pearson Street Bridge?
I think it'll be a little shorter than that one. I'm not sure the dimensions actually, but I believe it's shorter.
And I think that one's only roughly, 2.5 meters, 3 meters?
Correct. This incorporates a cycle route as well, or cycle path, right?
So, well, and I understand that, and it is just a little part. I think saving these trees probably is a better thing than having a big bridge. And I think cyclists will understand if we said that, hey, sorry, we made this bridge a little narrow, it's to save these 3 trees. But I don't like this design. Even when we look at number 1, can we go back to the first option? So I guess second option, sorry, that we're not going to miss that one, I think. That one, if we made it narrower, we could probably save all those trees and still try to get a little bit of an angle, not much of an S-curve for the RCMP for September and those issues. But again, and I'm sure if we reduce that from 13 feet down to what Councillor Bestwick says, 8, that would bring it maybe down to 450,000. I don't know construction cost from 690 as that price tag seems to be in effect. So I'm in favor of going with a narrower bridge. I think it seems like it is supposed to be a greenway, so let's try to keep it green. And I thought that was the whole point of this, and this was just to help pedestrians when we came up with this idea. I wasn't aware that we're going to be taking down some significant trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I actually like the idea of number 2 with the reduced width because it seems to be the best way to save all 3 trees. And if there is a reduced width, like Councillor Hong said, that should reduce the cost. I'd definitely like to see some new costs for either number 2 or number 3 with the reduced width so that we can make a proper choice. But I like the idea of saving trees. I remember when the spillway was being proposed for Colliery Dams, they mentioned 16 significant trees, which I believe were 6 inches wide, and I believe they took out over 100. And it was just sad to see those trees go. It's still sad to walk by and see the logs still sitting there and not being used for anything. So if we could save all 3 of those trees, I'd certainly be for it, even if it costs us a little bit more to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
This is the tough one for me. How old are those trees, and what is their life cycle? And you said the Bridge 1 was in the $500,000 range, and these next 2 are $100,000 more?
Correct.
I'm wondering why it would be $100,000 to angle the road from my perspective. I don't know what, maybe, I can't see the soil changing that quickly and that. But so if we went with the cheapest model, and if they're old trees, and we have $50,000 to plant more trees along the greenway, and if they're, beautiful, mature trees are phenomenal, but the lifespan of the cottonwoods, the lifespan of the dogwoods, and the maples that are there, some of the maples are suffering now with their top limbs are drying out. But from my perspective, a reasonable straight-through bridge, a narrower one, protecting the trees as much as we can, but also looking to planting more trees along that greenway. Even if we could plant fruit trees along there or something, local apple trees and things like that that could produce fruit. Draw bears too, though. Bears are okay. But so from my view is when we make a decision to save 3 trees and it's going to cost us $100,000 or $200,000 more, that doesn't make a sensible decision for me. I'm not worried about the SEPTED. All that is crime prevention through clear cut. So for me, it's an interesting one to spend more money to save 3 trees where we could spend less money and put in more trees. So I'm just putting that out there. Question-wise, how do we know the age of the trees? Has our arborist looked at the trees and said their approximate age and what's their life cycle? A cottonwood, how long is it going to last in that wetland? They grow pretty nice. Do you know?
I believe they're well over a century old, but I don't have a comment on the life cycle. And I should mention to council, I was just kind of scanning. The intention is certainly to plant and replace. I'm sorry, I don't have a number for you. It's like 16 or 18 trees within the riparian area, which will help stabilize the bank.
Bank stabilization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. If we were to stop at this point and redo the plans, including like a narrower bridge bed, I guess, what kind of cost would we incur at stopping at this point and redoing the plans? Would we have to put it out for RFP again? Because you mentioned something about that.
We would, Your Worship, we would actually probably use the same Herald Engineering Company to do a redesign. However, the timing is challenging. The project is currently out for tender, so it's either suspending that tender and going out with a new design, or potentially facing a change order until we can make that on the tender after we've awarded it. That's the sort of challenge that we're into, and I can't comment on the cost or the time it would take to do a redesign.
Okay. One thing I want to say is that SEPTED is important. It's important to the pedestrians, and in particular, seeing as I'm the only woman at the table tonight, it's particularly important for women to feel safe when they're going through areas that have lots of trees and vegetation. So for me, that is important. And I think I speak for a lot of women. And there's been incidents in Stanley Park and elsewhere. So I just want to make that important. It isn't really just safety for being able to cut trees down. There's actual human costs.
I would add one last risk for council is that a significant delay of more than a few weeks would potentially push us off completing the project, being able to complete the project this year. There's some in-stream works within the riparian area of the Chase River that needs to be done within the fisheries window.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of my questions I think have already been answered. I was curious about the age and more importantly, the health of the trees. I think that's a factor that needs to be taken into account. And I think I've heard Mr. Sims say that a delay in terms of a redesign or suspending the tender could have a significant time delay, which could put the project back until next year. Is that correct?
It's quite potential, yeah.
So I guess on top of that, my other comments would be, first reaction is, of course, we want to save the mature trees, but it's not always that easy, and it's not always that simple. And I would like to give staff credit for the fact that they have looked at other factors in recommending option one over the other two options, and I'm sorry that the options weren't earlier available to the delegation. But obviously there was other factors to look at and consider, and that's what makes it a difficult decision, but it's not one which is taken lightly. So I'm not sure where I want to go on this, but I do have one other question, Mr. Sims, and that is, has the idea of a narrower bridge deck been considered at all?
My understanding, Your Worship, is that in the neighborhood plan, the Harewood neighborhood plan, this envisioned a 4-meter pathway, and so that's the basis we did the design on. I cannot comment. I don't believe a narrower deck. It seems intuitive. I would point out that the graphics showing the trees are just that. They're not the actual size of the tree, right, or the trunk of the tree. Right. So it looks like, hey, it looks like we're missing them, but in actual fact, again, the constructability and the size of the trees are interfering.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I think doing projects like this that aren't time sensitive, I think we could take a bit of time to do it properly. Being a year off in this project, I don't have a problem with it. This is a neighborhood plan. If the neighborhood isn't happy and if it does call for that, let's take it back and consult with them and get it right. A 100-year-old tree it's got a good another 50 years, 30 years left on it. So I think it's a nice tree to try to save. So I don't have a problem. Like, it's been budgeted. I can't see it being difficult. I know that we would love to finish this for the safety of people not crossing the road over that without pedestrian access. But I think for us to put this off for a year, I don't have a problem with, and to come back with a design for a narrow bridge that is going to satisfy the neighbors and the neighborhood and the people that use it. And I think think that's the goal of us, is try to make it more user-friendly for everybody. So I don't have a problem with that, to defer this back to staff. So I'll make a motion to defer for reinvestigation. Is that how you want to call it? If that makes sense?
Okay, on a motion to refer, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Brennan, Mayor McKay opposed. Motion carries. Next item, Madam Clerk. Is the next one notice of motion for Councillor Beswick?
Yes, Your Worship. So under other business, I had the notices of motions from all of the different councillors under other business, and then under delegations, I had the gentleman we just heard from, as well as Mr. Gardner, and there was one other delegation too on my list. So right now would be the time for notices of motion, yes.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Beswick, Councillor Fuller, and Councillor Kipp. Councillor Beswick.
A simple notice of motion to that council bring forward bylaw 7,000 and any other related bylaws for discussion and recommendation at the next meeting of council.
Thank you. The next one is Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I'd like to bring forward a motion to get a report with regards to unfunded liabilities within the city of Nanaimo. What liabilities there are, the costs associated with, and the potential impact on taxes of those liabilities.
Okay, so this is a notice of motion.
Yep, notice of motion.
Thank you. We got that, Madam Clerk? Thank you. And the next one is Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like an update and time frame on some of the financial reporting, policy, and procedure projects that this staff has been working on since the core service review, a budget and fiscal management policy, reserve policy, revenue policy, debt management policy that have stemmed from the core service review. I'll be bringing forward a motion for those reviews and timeframes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's the notice of motions. The next one.
Oh, I got one, sir.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. See, this is going to be a motion, so not a notice, that from the correspondence that we got from the RWIC, they have some recommendations there. There are 3, and I think staff already do a good job with number 1. But the third one I want to do is direct staff from the city to meet with the VIRWIC, Nanaimo area members, meet ASAP to develop a plan to manage the no disclosure of the NRE and to ensure that residents continue to receive service. That's pretty much number 3 on the thing. I think we already take an active role in that. So I just want staff to meet with them to come up with a plan, update our information on where people can go to take their recycling. So the motion is that staff from the city meet with VIRWIC to develop a plan to manage the closure of the NRE to ensure that residents continue to receive service. So we just need them to meet with the private industry. Like I said, our website is lacking. I think there's some products that they said that they're going to do a press release on Thursday for the public. So I like staff to make sure they meet with them to come back and get the information and take charge in letting the public know on our website and on our social media pages and stuff like that for media to let them know.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Yoakum. Councillor Brennan.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I have some serious concerns about this. To begin with, I have serious concerns about the optics of it, that the NRE closes down and we take this opportunity then to meet with the private sector on how they can fill in for the NRE. I just think that we need to look at the NRE's information for us before we start to do any work with the private sector in taking over this vital service. I think that Mr. Sims has done a good job of putting out information on our website and elsewhere. I've noticed that the private sector is already advertising what they do on Facebook and other places. So I think at this point, we need to continue to work through this plan before we go meeting with the private sector. I think that it's a bad move, and I think it will be seen as a bad move, and I'd rather we not go there right now. I think we have enough trouble.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. The reason I brought this forward was because of the residents. I don't want them taking their stuff to the dump. I don't want them to throw in the garbage. I want them to have information and locations that they can take their products to. And that's the key goal here, is to reduce the disruption. The NRA could be out for a year. They have to build a building. So what are we going to do for the next year if we don't have a plan in place? We already got caught off guard with this, and we didn't have any information to let the public know when they did close. We knew that they were closing, and we had no plan. So now we're just going to wait and wait for what? We don't even know when they're coming forward back with a business plan. We deferred this. Deferred it to when? Nobody said. It wasn't a timeline. So for us to be waiting, we're doing injustice for our residents. The reason we're doing this is so the residents know that their recycling has a home, and that's all this is. Nothing more. It's just for the benefit of the residents that we should be taking charge, not the private industry. If we care about recycling, it doesn't matter who does it. We should do it, and we should let the residents know. So that's why I put this motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Well, I couldn't agree with Councillor Hong anymore, because this is about education. This is about redirecting people now at this point in time that the NRE is not available to them. Now what? We're all receiving countless emails asking, where do I take my stuff? So it's really easy to say, well, go on our website and look where you can take your stuff. But I don't think that it's an imposition on our staff to meet with the private industry in the interim to determine how to mitigate the problem. And the problem, hopefully, is that litter isn't everywhere, and we'll be able to say, these are the 4 or 5 or 6 depots that take X, Y, or Z in the interim. I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. I think that makes perfect practical sense. I would like us to also consider, we all talk about greenhouse gas emissions, we all talk about convenience. I'm hearing now the price of gas to drive from one point A to point B to drop off recycling. We just invested, well, when the automated waste disposal rollout reaches its maximum, it'll be $8+ million. Perhaps we should be doing curbside glass every 3 months. Save your glass at home. We'll pick it up at curbside. You can't get more convenient than that. Plastic. Okay, well, you can't get more convenient than picking it up at curbside 3 months later. So it gets picked up twice a year on a quarterly basis. Sure, there'd be some costs. And the report that we all have indicates that the cost per private, that would be about 150 grand. So I think there's many more options for us to entertain when we're visiting this extremely complex subject matter and topic. And just going to point out again that we're $8 million for curbside pickup, and this council chose to pick up yard waste. So if we can pick up yard waste and everything else, surely we can pick up glass. And surely we can pick up plastic bags. 30,000 units are going to have a little green bin that I don't know what we're going to do with. I hope those don't end up in the landfill. But there's about 30 to 40,000 of them. We could use those to put glass in. We could use and 3 months later, put your plastic bags in there. So I don't know if I can get more convenient. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I think I understand the intent of the motion, but I have trouble with the wording with regard meeting with the private sector, it to me suggests talking about some formulation of a business arrangement. I'm quite happy to have the private sector go ahead and put out their press releases, and I'm sure they'll do a good job of circulating those and making the information available to the public, because that's what they want. And they can certainly share that on their own with our city staff so that we can advertise it on our website for them as well. But I don't think anything beyond that is necessary or even appropriate at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Question through you to staff. I like the motion. I like the idea of getting the information. I heard Cascade Recovery mentioned earlier, and I'm on their website, and it says they accept styrofoam batteries, metal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know if that's a drop-off location that anybody could use? Because the next time I go to Jack Point, until the NRE is either whatever happens to the NRE, I'm going to drop off my styrofoam and some of my other stuff there when I go for a walk. So I'm just curious if you can actually drop that stuff off there, or that's where the NRE or other companies would send it.
Worship, I'm not sure, quite frankly, to Councillor Fuller's question, that whether that's a drop-off for public or not.
Also, thanks. Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Well, this is really confusing to me. We're talking about, there are many, many more options. And if that's true, then we should know them now before we made some decision out at the RDN not to do something. If we thought there was many, many more options, why are we defaulting onto the private sector is the only one that can do it? I don't get that. I'm just, with regard to these little green bins, and it's come up several times, and hoping they don't go to the landfill, among other hopes. And then finally, the hope that they can be set on the side of the road with our glass jars in it. We know that those little bins don't get picked up by that garbage truck. We know that. We've known that from the beginning. That's why we have the big green bins. So that's kind of a flight of fantasy to think that we're going to be able to pick up those little green bins with the big machine, which is really digressing, but honestly, it has come to the point where we aren't making decisions and moving forward. We are stuck. We continue to complain. We continue to use the apocryphal story of the 3 pickle jars and the guy that drives for 400 miles just to go to the NRE. Those things don't happen. We know they don't happen. So let's just try and deal with what we know to be true. And we've done a good job of putting the stuff on our website. The private sector is doing a fabulous job of their work. Let's leave it at that. Let's look at the NRE proposal, their business plan, and move forward and quit going back and back and back all the time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Yocum, but I'd ask Council to address the, not debate on what a previous speaker may have said, but to debate the motion that's on the floor. Councillor Yocum.
Absolutely. We had a conversation an hour ago about where we're going to discuss the next steps with NRE. Absolutely. So I look forward to that information. But nevertheless, I can concur. We need something to interim. We're getting emails per hour about the recycling, so we have to have something in place. I don't see myself an issue with the motion, for the fact is we have staff meet with a nonprofit on the same subject. So I'm not in a position of nonprofit versus private. I just want to make sure there's recycling is happening. And for example, we're not discussing the issue tonight was options, but many of these options don't even, so if we're discussing, this is for Councillor Thorpe, thinking the optics are being accurate about discussing for private or the concern. Well, the concern is we're meeting with the nonprofits or discussing the subject of nonprofit with half these recommendations, we don't qualify under the community charter if you went through it. But that's not tonight's subject. Well, I thought it was going to be, and I did my homework. But nevertheless, I want to make sure our qualifying criteria and user fees and all that stuff. So it goes 2 ways. So we have a responsibility today to ensure that recycling, these people that are rightfully bombarding us are with confusion, we solve it. There's nothing wrong with Mr. Sims or his wonderful staff to discuss on where to go in the interim or maybe the long term. I don't know what the future leads, but nevertheless, that is our duty. It isn't profit versus nonprofit battle. This is definitely gotten very politicized. You know, it's been on the table for 5 years, but nevertheless, we have responsibility to let the people know where to go today. Whether some people will like it or not, I'm sorry, but that's what we have to do today to ensure, because it's everyone's concern. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. We have the benefit of the RDN report that is in camera because it's a financial report. From my perspective, we have also a responsibility to meet with our businesses and all of the players. Like when Dr. Hasselback was here, all of the players in the game and all the institutions need to be involved in the problem solving. So by sitting here saying we can only talk to NRE or not talk to private or only talk to private and not talk to NRE is not involving all of the players. So I think what this motion on the floor does is it starts to tie together all of the organizations, because we haven't heard from everybody. We haven't been lobbied. I've been lobbied by Facebook and email on, yes, open the NRE, but with no facts and figures. Everybody just wants to be able to drop off. And I'm the one that says the pickle jars and the styrofoam. There's 7,000 dots on the map that come from all over the region. It said there were 5 or 4,000 dots on the map, whatever it was. But it wasn't attached to a business plan, a cost, the inevitable, the change in garbage. And so for me, when we hear, oh, do you know what recycling is going to do in 10 years? And the business guy says, no, he doesn't. And RDN or NRE doesn't really know what's going to happen in 10 years. But we're looking at sponsoring organic waste with over amounts and NRE with amounts we don't know. So I think everyone deserves to have their input into this. Business, the public, NRE, nonprofits, all of the organizations, even the provincial government. Because if the places in town close and multi-material recycling says you have to ship it somewhere up, Courtney or somewhere else, up goes the price. And without a plan, you can construct some really bad enterprise. So I think it's good to talk to everyone in this, and therefore I support the motion on the floor to talk to the recyclers.
Thank you. Any first-time speakers? Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Brandon's not here, but Councillor Thorpe is. Let me ask you, Councillor Thorpe, where are you going to take your toilet for the rebate?
Well, I'd have to check the city website, Councillor Hong.
But they have to talk to the private, because the only person that took it was the NRE. So now we have to direct staff to work with somebody to take those toilets.
But, and I don't think the intent is for us to debate across the table, but to understand the intent of your motion, my argument against it was simply that the private sector is going to put out a press release with that information on their own, share it with our city staff, which we will put on our website, so I didn't see the need to meet with them.
Because the toilet program is our program, the City of Nanaimo's program. So unless we tell or contract out to a private person to take that toilet program, how do I get my $50 back? Or whatever that money costs. So staff need to talk with the private group, because we have programs that were administered by the NRE. And for yard waste, I'm going to ask this question at the RDN. The NRE takes the green waste. Do we have somebody now that's going to take the yard waste and take it? And because there are programs that we do, that we administer, that we pay for services rendered, and that has to continue. What I was trying to get at is we need to continue this recycling without disruption, and that's why I want staff to meet with the private groups so we can continue this program so they know what they're doing with staff direction, because I like to know where somebody's going to take those toilets. And if the NRE is gone with that program and with this, the yard waste, who's going to take those programs? Are we now going to contract out? You know, that's, again, RDN issue. Are we going to contract out to a private organization that is going to pay us? Because we currently now pay the NRE to dispose of it at now. So how is that going to work? And like I said, this is for the interim, so we need these discussions. We can't be left in the dark, and we can't leave staff in the dark. This gives staff the ability to talk to the private organizations so they can come back with options for us. Because these are our programs that we need to administer. Well, why should we wait? Like, we could be active and proactive at doing this and giving staff the ability to talk to the private so they have council's blessing to go forward with getting their work done without us interfering, coming back to them and say, well, we didn't tell you to do that. So this is just a motion for staff. It's not to get anything accomplished. It was just to meet and to discuss and have a plan, because we need a plan.
Apparently not.
Thank you. That's why.
Councilor Beswick.
Thank you. Well, we're making it sound like the private industry isn't part of the solution, and they are, and they always have been, and they will always continue to be. And given the circumstance that we find ourselves in today, we need to ensure that the citizens and everybody in it, inside our boundaries, know where to take what. So I think that that's what that directs our staff to do, to ensure that the information that we're putting out on our website and theirs is consistent, and it's the same. To the comment that our new automated waste disposal units with the arms won't pick up the small, I wouldn't suggest that they would have to. We can drive around and pick those things up and throw them in the back of a truck, because they're not going to be heavy. And the reason why that we had to dispose of them, because the materials inside it was so heavy, it was causing considerable amount of tissue damages to the sanitation workers.
Relevance to the motion, Councillor?
Well, the relevance to the motion is the comment that was made previously about one of my colleagues.
I asked you not to debate the comments of the other councillors.
And this is a Cal meeting that is a little bit less informal and a
You can stay
little
with the
more
motion, please,
informal.
Councillor.
So I will be supporting the motion for the reasons stated.
Thank you. So, there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. I'm going to call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? So Councillor Thorpe, Mayor McKay opposed. Motion carries. Next item. Councillor, or pardon me, Ms. Curry. The next item is we've done all of the other business. Have I missed anything? Okay, thank you. Next item is delegation for Mr. Larry Gardner, Manager of Solid Waste, Regional District of Nanaimo, to present Stage 3 of the update to the Regional District of Nanaimo's Solid Waste Management Plan. Good evening, Mr. Gardner.
Good evening. Your Worship, Council, thank you so much for the opportunity to present. As the Mayor said, it's an update on our Solid Waste Management Plan. We're getting near completion of the plan, or hopefully, hope to have it to the board in May.
Of waste away from landfill. Right now, we are 68% of the way there. Thanks to your efforts and programs like recycling and composting. The next step towards zero waste is to make recycling and composting easier for commercial businesses, industries, institutions, and multifamily residences like apartments. Our landfill is mostly made up of commercial waste, while 80% of that is actually compostable or readily recyclable. Through planning and regulations, we'll work with the commercial sector to help keep compost and recyclables out of landfill by diverting waste at the source. These efforts will make it easier for businesses and multifamily residences to recycle and compost. The waste industry in our region currently generates over $17 million for the local economy through the creation of jobs and investment. By licensing private haulers, we will help grow this industry further and strengthen the business of diversion. As a result, there will be better access to recycling and composting services for residents and businesses, so resources won't end up in the landfill. These plans mean a greener future that we can be proud of. Together, we're making zero waste happen. Get involved and join the conversation.
So we do have a plan. and this is a bit of a summary. You saw it there, but I'll run through a little bit more detail. So the plan was last updated in 2004. They have about a 10-year horizon. So 2013, we started looking at what the next 10 years would look like. We thought we'd have the plan done in a year or so. It's taken a little longer than that. Here we are, 2018. We're hoping to have it complete over the next couple of months. Throughout the planning process, it was updated by our Regional Advisory Committee, which is made up of representatives from the community, that's some of the public agency groups, industry, and they were very active throughout the process. As well, we did a lot of, over the last 4 years, we've done a lot of public communication, so we've got a lot of input from the community on the plan over its development. So, new programs. I'm not going to talk about the existing programs we have. I'm just going to run through the new programs or ones that we've amended slightly. I won't read these ones here because I'll go through them individually. So the first is household hazardous waste. Most household hazardous waste, solvents, antifreezes, gasoline are covered by a provincial stewardship program, but there are some materials that aren't covered, might be like the rat poison you find in Grandpa's shed. The committee felt very strongly that there should be an avenue for reasonable disposal of that material, otherwise it's likely to end up in the landfill. You'll see with this slide and all the ones that follow, I've identified what the cost of each of the program is, what the cost of assessment, if it was paid for by taxation, and that's just kind of a ballpark number because it does vary a little bit in the regional district, and then what the estimated diversion. So you'll see with this program, cost would be about $100,000 annually. It would cost about 28 cents per $100,000 of assessment, and you'd get less than 1% diversion, but it is the nasty stuff. So these two programs are not really new. They're really more an expansion of what we currently do, and it's the Enhanced Industrial, Commercial, and Institutional Program and commercial demolition waste. We largely manage these by first education, but as well differential tipping fees and some enforcement on our landfill bans. We have been doing very little on the enforcement side, and we could definitely do more on the education side with the community. So if we take our existing programs, we expand them for dealing with the industrial commercial material, it would cost about $200,000 a year, about 54 cents in taxation per 100,000, and we get about 3% additional diversion over what we currently have. As far as for the commercial demolition, probably about $40,000 a year, 11 cents per 100,000 of taxation, and we get about an estimated diversion of about 3% through that program as well. So this is where things start to get a little bit more innovative and a little different. We're looking at, or we're proposing to make mandatory source separation. So basically everybody would have multiple bins for disposal. So a waste bin, an organics bin, and a recycling bin. For those that live in a single-family residential home within the region, you get curbside collection. It's not optional. You pay for that service whether you use it or not. It seems that the people that are paying for the service tend to use it because they're paying for it anyway. We get tremendous participation through our residential curbside program. If you think about it of really an expansion of that, the difference is we wouldn't be providing the service. We would require by bylaw that everybody have multiple bins, and it would be up to their contracted service provider to provide those services. Cost of that program is about $373,000 a year. The tax implication about 99 cents per 100,000, and we potentially get 10% diversion in conjunction with the next piece I'm going to talk about is waste hauling. And the reason we've grouped these together is for us to figure cause and effect. They work quite well together that we can reasonably predict what we might be able to get for diversion out of both programs. So the other piece is waste hauler licensing. And the reason we'd like to license the waste haulers is we'd actually like to give them a reduced tipping fee at the landfill. Why do we want to give them a reduced tipping fee? We'd like the waste to flow through industry before it comes to us. Why? Because they're actually better at diversion and recycling than we are. If all we did was offer them a reduced fee, they just bring us bigger loads of garbage. So the idea is to couple that with the disposal levy. What we're trying to do is take away the behavior or the effort to look for low-cost disposal and instead put their effort and innovation into diversion. We're fairly comfortable or confident if we can make diversion more profitable than disposal, that's the activity we'll get. The cost of doing this, about $470,000 a year, $1.25 through per $100,000 tax assessment, and an estimated diversion in conjunction with the mandatory source separation of 10% of the waste stream. And then finally, zero waste recycling. Our committee felt very strongly it was important that the regional district should contribute some funds to the recycling of materials that aren't really commercially viable. Recently, the board directed that the funding, that RDN be specifically named as the recipient of the funding to do both recycling materials that aren't commercially viable and to do research as well to motivate more markets. The cost of that program would be about $300,000 a year, 81 cents per 100,000 tax assessment with a projected diversion of less than 1% of the waste stream. So I didn't give a chart of how all those add up, but if you trust me, it adds up to about 85% diversion. We do know there's going to be changes and improvements over the next 10 years to the provincial stewardship programs. So between what we're doing, provincial programs and federal programs, we're pretty confident that can get us to the 90%. In aggregate costs, or what does it cost to individuals, our current program is about $3.3 million. It would go to 4.9, 1.6 million increase. That's entirely directed around achieving higher waste diversion. And on a per capita cost, it's about $10 per person per year. Another way to break it down is if we pay for the new programs through tax requisition, the new programs would be $4.10 per $100,000 of assessment. People are currently paying a little over $3. So total, $7.14 per 100,000. If you live in a $500,000 home, it'd be about $36 a year. Again, those additional funds are all directed at getting us to higher waste diversion. So we've done a lot of consultation to date. The board approved the draft plan back in August. Since then, we've been out talking to the community. I'll run through what our efforts have been and a little bit of what we've heard. So we've done 10 public meetings. Although we sent out over 60,000 invites, we only had 100 attendees. Not the greatest return on investment. We've had 6 stakeholder meetings, and we've met with the industry group, and there were 29 participants. We've done a couple of surveys, one at the landfill and one that's currently online. If people go to get involved, RDN, the survey's there. We encourage everyone to take it. We've done a couple of newsletters to over $24,000 homes. I've presented at the Solid Waste Association in North America annual general meeting in Vancouver. I've done 2 TV interviews with Shaw. They are available on YouTube. Save yourself, a half an hour and don't watch them. Done a few public events, number of communication material and fact sheets. We've had a traveling display that's been set up at different locations throughout the regional district. We've done poster ads on all the RDN transit buses. Just to back up, the social media. We've got about 20,000, or we've engaged about 20,000 people. We know we've got feedback from about 1,000. So we've put a lot of effort into trying to get out to the community. What have we heard? General support for the diversion goal, the services, and the costs. As far as the industry's feedback, definitely industry's voice that they're supportive of the 90% diversion target. There's varied opinion on the waste licensing concept. In general, industry doesn't support increased regulation. Our survey results to date, numbers have changed a little bit, but we've had about 210 online. We've had the 500 or about 700, a little over 700 in person. Stats are pretty similar results, even with the changes. So about 31% of the people are aware we've been working on the solid waste management plan. So given all the efforts, a third of the population's at least aware, we're actually fairly pleased with that. Very high percentage, 97%, support a 90% diversion goal. When you start to get to costs, the number falls a little bit, but about 3/4 of the people are supportive of a cost around $10 per person per year. And then about 5% are moderately or slightly supportive. That gets us into the 80s. So I take that as, you know, there's 18% that either don't care or don't support. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Questions, Councillor Beswick?
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Appreciate your presentation. The $36, $37 that you're speaking to household per $500,000 application in the regional district of Nanaimo, how does that impact our current user, or would it impact our current user fees in the city of Nanaimo?
So those tax rec are across the board and would apply to the Nanaimo residents as well? So it would be the same equivalent cost?
The same equivalent cost. So on a $500,000 home in Nanaimo, I don't know, I can't remember what we are now, $189, or I'm not sure what we are on an annual basis. So you're telling me that a $500,000 home would go up another $36 or $37 in the city of Nanaimo?
No, it wouldn't go up that much. Currently, you're paying $3 and change.
So it'd be indexed
So you'd be
somehow?
like 15, right now you're like $15 and it would go up to like 35, so a $20 increase.
Okay, and thank you. And my next question, this is my only two questions. You indicated that commercial, industrial, apartments, or otherwise would be sort of at source, if you will. So how, because it's one of the common complaints that we hear, or, you know, a fourplex or above isn't really sorting necessarily. Some units are independent of others, but not necessarily. So
yeah,
I don't know if you know where I'm going, but if you can try to help me.
Fabulous comment. So what I present is, for simplicity, I actually see there's probably two ways it'll roll out. One would be, I think probably we'll see industry respond with, stick it all in one bin and I'll sort it for you and I'll charge you. Or I can give you a better price, and if you sort it, then you'll pay a lower cost. But part of the reason why I say these work really well together is if we can make it more profitable for business to divert, that's the behavior they're going to want to do. So it's about encouraging business to sell more and better services. So all of a sudden, they'll be starting to spend the time with their clients, whether it's a school or whether it's McDonald's, to try to encourage them to recycle more and divert more. Why? Not just because it's a nice thing to do, but it actually puts more nickels in their jeans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner, for the presentation. Couple of questions. First, just going over this that you handed out to us. Under existing programs include, are these programs what the actual RDN does or do, or are these some of these things that are contracted out to be done?
I'm not sure which.
Existing programs include.
Page 4.
Page
Oh,
4.
page 4, sorry.
Because the
So-
first one on there is school education program.
That actually NRE has been providing that program for us for the last number of years, yes.
Okay, so some of these ones are, like, was my question, was first one is other organizations are doing it on your behalf, or are all these done by the RDN?
That won't be the only one, actually. Well, the illegal dumping program, I mean, we manage that directly, but we work with a contractor.
On that, okay, thank you. And then follow up on some of the other questions. Back to your 300,000 for the NRE to do non-recycling, and I saw that goes up. But since they're not going to be doing the green bin or yard waste, at this point, because the city of Nanaimo is doing our own yard waste. Would that program still continue, and so would that lower our rates, offset by $270,000 roughly?
So ultimately, that would be a decision of the board. The board's direction was very clear, at least when it came to what's provided in the solid waste management plan and the funding to NRE. That's specific for zero waste recycling and to act as a research hub. So that wouldn't include the yard and garden waste.
Yeah, so that's completely
portion.
different, because the question I bring that up is we're collecting, as a city, collecting our own yard waste in the next year or whenever we roll it out. So for us to be paying for our own yard waste and paying for somebody else's yard waste, that doesn't seem to make any sense for this. If the rest of the RDN would like to pay the NRE for their yard waste, I'm happy with that. I don't have a problem with it.
I suspect with NRE recently closing, or at least for the interim, that the yard and garden waste, the processing that they've been doing will discontinue. If they were to start up and like to do that, that program again, that would be something that would need to go to the board.
Great, thank you. And then just to follow up on with regards to the cost of this $470,000, a couple of slides back that you referred to for the licensing program to implement it. So,
Anyway.
Why would it, I'm confused on why it would cost us money. Are we giving the haulers money? Like, why would it cost us $470,000?
Sort of indirectly. I mean, it's a great question, right? So if we do, so with our landfill, and just rough numbers, it costs about $75 a ton for our disposal costs for actually operating. The difference, well, and then the front end, so say $100 a ton all in for the landfill. We collect $120 for tipping, $125 for tipping fees. Though that other $25 goes for managing other programs like illegal dumping, education, whatever. If we reduce the fee to the waste haulers going into the landfill, we still need to recover that additional money to provide these other programs that I've talked about. So we still need to source that, right? Because we would be getting less fee at the landfill. Now, recycling, as we've heard earlier tonight, recycling costs money. Waste diversion costs money. If you're looking for cheap, landfills are cheap. If you want to maximize diversion, if we want to get to 90%, it's going to cost. There's a number of different ways to do that. We could retain one entity, like we could retain, whether it's private sector or nonprofit, we could actually pay someone to provide a service. That provides one entity, or we could expand that out greater, but then costs go up. If we leverage the whole industry to motivate the whole industry to focus on diversion, then we start to see more services, more convenience. Some of the things that have been talked about earlier tonight is about having to drive all over. And when you only have a couple of facilities to take it to, you don't have as many options. Well, if we can leverage the whole industry to provide more services, we end up getting more convenience. So what do we get out of it? We get more convenience, we get higher diversion, we grow an industry, and we all benefit within the community of a healthy, robust economy. So if we can create jobs, we get, not only it's good for the environment, but it's good for the economy. So that's kind of the cycle that we're trying to motivate.
Okay, so just to understand, the 470 is our loss of revenue that the landfill would occur because we're giving breaks, cheaper rates for private organizations.
Essentially, there's some administrative cost to actually manage the program that's built into that as well.
Yeah.
But largely that would be it, yes.
So we're subsidizing private industry.
Well, and actually I wouldn't agree that
We're
it's
reducing our
I wouldn't
fees, I guess.
You're
We're
absolutely
reducing
right.
our fees at a loss to encourage.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do we encourage the private guys, like exactly what you said, and just to explain to the public, if it's cheaper, then why would I sort it? I'll just dump it there because I got a break. So how do we reduce that? And what is the mechanism that we're going to use for this licensing that encourages the private people not to use our landfill as much? Because
great.
if it's cheaper, I'm paying $100 now and I was paying 125 a ton, well, why would I do it?
So you saw with the example, there's two pieces to it. One is reduce costs, so that's to actually have waste flow to industry. If we give them a price differential, if they're cheaper than our landfill, the waste starts to flow to them before it comes to us. Then the second piece is the disposal levy, and now we would impose on anything that goes for disposal anywhere. So right now, we still have waste every day that's shipped to the U.S. for disposal. What the waste industry has traditionally done is maximize profits by searching for low-cost disposal. What we want to do is change that behavior to look for options for diversion and recycling. So right now, material waste that's generated in our region that gets shipped out for disposal, they don't contribute to the other programs that we pay for in part by tipping fees, so they escape those costs. So there's some basis to say, well, if you operate or you live and work or have businesses in the regional district, you should all share in these costs. So that's how we've arrived at the balance for the reduced fee to get the waste to go to industry, but then a disposal levy that discourages disposal.
Thank you. And then, so just to follow up on that, so then we're going to be making money on, so this is like a speculation tax kind of. So if they take it to our landfill, do we still hit them with this levy? Is every load going to be hit with a levy? Because that should generate a lot of money. I'm just understanding why it would cost us money.
Everything that would go for disposal in a landfill or incinerator would actually pay the disposal levy.
So,
but it would not apply to materials that are diverted or recycled.
But in the long run, so the private guys are just going to have a wash because they're paying you per a levy for every load that they take to your dump to our landfill, because we're trying to not take them out. So they're going to, and I understand they're going to sort it out, take the recycling out, have a smallest bin possible if they decide to take it to the US. They're going to pay a fee for that, or they can put it in our dump. Why?
So, I mean, it does affect how we structured the fees, but it is intended to actually have a lower net cost, combination of disposal cost, the disposal levy and the tipping fee. The combination of those still needs to be less than what our gate fee is at the landfill. You still need the price differential to encourage the material to flow to industry, but you want the disposal levy to make it, again, it's absolute cost is less important for business decisions than profit. So even if we drop absolute cost and they're more profitable on diversion, we're fairly confident they'll put their effort in where they make more profit.
Thank you. And then just to follow up, my last question is trying to save our landfill so we can maximize the use of it. If it's garbage, garbage is going to be garbage, is going to be put into a landfill. Well, I'd rather than put it in a landfill in the States than our landfill. I'm not saying that without the recycling. If it's a landfill, for us to preserve our landfill, I don't want them to put it in our landfill. That makes no sense to me, because the more we put in, the faster it fills up. So I'm confused on how that would work. Like I said, if we can help them and we pull all that recycling out, and if they ship it down to the States, so be it. It saves the life of our landfill. And if it costs a little more money, like you said, it's going to cost money, then that seems to be the way that we prolong it. So I think there's a lot I don't understand about this yet, and I'm still trying to catch up. So thank you very much. Sorry it took so long. Sorry, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Why don't we ban styrofoam? Why aren't we working on that? We're accepting all this waste. Sweden banned it. They're getting rid of some of this. Why can't we? What is it?
So we ban the sale or ban the disposal?
Ban the bringing into our country of it.
So local government does not have the ability to regulate consumer products. That is something that is within the scope of the province of the federal government. So definitely, we can lobby the province or the federal government to take those kinds of action. I would suggest that BC, and at least on the stewardship front, they're probably more advanced than any jurisdiction in the world.
So follow up on this then too, the hauling fee for people, or the touch fee, there's opposition to that. And I agree with Councillor Hong. If we've got a company that diverts 100,000 tons like we've had, and it leaves here, the city doesn't get, or the region doesn't get its $130 a ton. And so we lose that revenue on 100,000 tons, which can amount to a lot, and that's to pay for the programs. So I guess the thing for me, the word diversion always, that dump should have been closed all my life. We have to keep it open for, after you stop taking garbage, if you're still here in that tenure, we have to keep that dump alive or manage it for 200 years now, am I correct? Went up from 50 a year and a half ago to 200 years. So the minute we stop taking garbage, we have to maintain it and make sure, so that's a 200-year thing. Where is a way? Where's this magical place called diversion? Because all it is, this program is based on keeping our dump alive. And like Councillor Hong said, if we can ship the garbage back to where it came from and not accept it, it would be cheaper for us. This is it's a huge project, our dump out there. And now Nanaimo Organic Waste, do we have any idea they've diverted how many tons over the years? And where is it now? It's displaced diversion, or away, where garbage goes, it goes away. And that's what I don't have, is a cradle to grave value on some of these things. And I know styrofoam isn't going to our dump. It doesn't go off the IB. If it's $5 to take it to Vancouver, you get $5 a ton, and it costs you $400 to take it to Vancouver. It doesn't, you can't. You'll stockpile it, you'll throw it away, you'll garbage it. So how is our plan now going to deal with that less than 1%? When I see this it diverts 3%, it diverts somewhere. Where do we know that goes? Like we knew in Urbanta, it went to an incinerator in the States on a 10,000-acre dump site with a 1,000-acre park around it, with an incinerator that creates electricity and steam. And they have only like 10 employees on site. And that's where that garbage is going. It's not going to our landfill. So isn't that a great diversion?
So the material, sorry, I missed the last piece.
Well, if DBL, I'll say the name, is putting 10 tons in the ground, and they're scraping out 6 tons worth of value of it, and it's leaving 3 tons, and they send that 3 tons to your dump, it sits in our dump. But if they send it to the States, or, it's diverted. It's away from our dump. It's a pure form of diversion, for my sense.
It's relocated to, well, at least within the solid waste game, we wouldn't consider that diversion. Might consider it relocation. To send it to another location for either incineration or landfilling, we don't, at least within the industry, we don't count that as waste diversion.
So Nanaimo Organic Waste is not waste diversion then? It just goes in stockpiles and it stinks and it isn't getting into soil?
Well, that material is actually beneficially used. So the compost out of Nanaimo Organic Waste is applied to the land in a beneficial use. So I guess
it's 130 a ton and it's got no value when it comes out of there. Am I correct? They're not selling it for anything.
It's right. It's not sold. It's not sold for profit. The stuff out of the material, the finished compost currently out of Nanaimo Organic Waste, because of the bits of plastic and whatever, it's not a saleable product. So it's basically removed for the value of the trucking. So it's not actually currently sold at a profit. If they can increase the value of it, then they would be able to. But nevertheless, the material is still land applied for beneficial use. Again, if they could clean the material up, it would be a higher value product and they would be able to sell it.
Okay. I think that's why I'm honestly not certain where our way is still. And this diversion from our landfill is the big, it's an expensive proposition to run that landfill and trying to create all the diversion. We have to do it. But the first word is reduce. but we work on reuse and recycle and not much reduce, not much banning. Although the landfill has banned products and created the diversion streams. There's for gyprock, for glasses, for all of that. But where did it go? Where's all the glass going now that we don't collect?
As Jan Hastings said earlier, almost everything's recyclable. So if you roll back the clock like 30 years, everything went to the landfill, like everything went to the landfill. But you look around now, the amount of materials and multinational businesses that are actually manage recyclables, are managed as commodities now. And that's because over the last 30 years, we've changed the economics. So it's actually big business can actually manage these materials. What our plan proposes to do is push that economic model much further. So a lot of the materials that currently aren't viable to recycle will become viable to recycle, and that's where we get the higher diversion.
I know there's lots of burying even around our area. There's lots of burying going on. So, thank you very much. Appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions for you. One is just an observation that's with respect to styrofoam, one of the menaces of the recycling industry. I'm noticing now that packages that come to our house now no longer use chips, those little styrofoam chips. They're now using small air-filled poly bags. In other words, there's just a couple of bags surrounding the item, as opposed to a box full of chips. The other one, of course, is that I'm starting to see now more and more formed materials that are replacing the large amounts of styrofoam. So, for example, you buy a TV or something along those lines that you would normally expect to see packaged with styrofoam wrapped around it is now a specially formed cardboard-like material that's much easier to recycle than the styrofoam. What I wanted to ask you is, do you agree, and I don't normally see you unless we're at our Regional Solid Waste Advisory Committee and Select Committee, but one of the senses that I'm getting is that our community are very, very staunch on ensuring that when they put something or take something, quote, away, that they want it to be recycled. That they don't want it to go away and have somebody high grade a couple of items off of it and then the rest of it goes into a landfill. They want the entire item to be recycled. Mattresses, furniture, carpets, underlay, items that take huge volumes in the landfill. Would you not agree that our community want to see that stuff recycled, not high graded, and put in the dump?
Well, the regional district in Nanaimo and our neighbors just to the south, they've got the lowest diversion per capita in the world. I can't find anybody who's done as well as we have. And I challenge anyone to find me somewhere else because people keep throwing out names and I keep checking and we're as good as it gets. And I think there's a long way we can still go. But yeah, definitely our community's been very committed to promoting waste diversion and recycling.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I agree with you on that point, and I would suggest to you that it's because we have used this specific system and it has worked really well for us. And so people are happy with the curbside collection. People are happy that our waste is being composted, and people were very happy to be able to use a one-stop shop that was really convenient for them and run as a grassroots organization. And I think that a large part of our success can be attributed to those things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gardner. Appreciate you being so patient and giving a very detailed presentation. Thank you very much. So, Ms. Curry, I'm going to suggest that we're at question period unless I've missed something. Thank you very much.
You have missed a delegation from Mr. Thien.
Ah,
Yes, that Councillor Kipp added, so he is next under delegations.
Harvey Thien.
how do we spell that?
Thien.
Mr. Thien.
This is a bylaw on a ticketing issue.
So,
You have 5 minutes, sir. 5 minutes.
yes, Harvey Thien is my name. I've lived in Nanaimo since 1950. I'm just going to question the old city mixed-use DT8 zoning. This zone provides for mixed commercial residential buildings. Commercial use are permitted at street level and multifamily residence uses on the second and third stories. It is intended to provide for the adaptive reuse of character buildings. Has there been any changes in regards to the parking?
Our staff is-
Mr. Lindsay.
There he is.
I'm sorry, Your Worship, I'd have to better understand the question. Is there any change with respect to the required parking on the property, or?
Yes. Like I bought my home in 1994. It was zoned C17, Old City Mixed Multiple Family Commercial Zoning. But has there been any changes in regards to amount of vehicles you can have parked on there for any of the character homes under this DT8?
Sorry, Your Worship, I think I better understand. So the question is, has there been a change to the maximum number of vehicles that you can have associated with a single-family dwelling? And no, I don't believe there has been since the 90s. It's been a maximum of 4.
I mean, it's nice to have this multifamily thing, but where do they park?
On the property sometimes, on the street sometimes.
Well, according to the bylaws, they say that you're only allowed 4 vehicles on your property.
Okay.
Now, all of a sudden, you have multifamilies there. 6 people have a vehicle. Where are they going to park?
Your Worship, maybe I can help clarify. So the bylaw says if you have a single-family home on the property, the maximum you can have is 4 vehicles. If a property such as the one being discussed allows for multifamily or commercial or any other use, when the property is redeveloped to allow for those uses, they would have to include that number of parking spaces on the site as part of their redevelopment. It might be that some properties are, and I don't know the specific lot, but some properties might be so small that lot consolidation is required before you actually look at anything in terms of significant multifamily redevelopment. But it's really a site-by-site response.
But I think it's something that the council should address in regards to parking on the properties. Because if you're allowed 4 vehicles and you've got 6 vehicles, where do they park?
So there's a certain amount of minimum requirement on the property. This would be no different than somebody with a 5-bedroom house renting out a bedroom to 5 or 6 people. Where would the extra cars go?
Well, in comparison, if you have a duplex, they're allowed 3 vehicles per side. That's 6 vehicles. And now somebody has 6 people living in the house, they're only allowed 4 vehicles?
With parking on site?
I just think that if they're going to change the zoning and that, they should also address the parking situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No. Have you signed up, Bernie? Have you signed up? Yes. Okay. So we're at question period. Bruni. Good evening.
Hi, Bruni, 1300 Stewart Avenue. Number 9, public service. My dear Mayor and honorable councillors, Do you give your approval to the Community Planning Committee to cut down live trees on public land? Do you realize there's been many arbutus trees cut down on the public walkway? These trees are protected. This is the only place in all of North America where the arbutus trees grow. And then there is 3 beloved trees in Harwood, fearfully waiting your decision. The community plan repeats continually to keep Nanaimo green, and I beg you to stop cutting down the live trees if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I think staff have mentioned that that was an accident. And Bruno, you're right. We are trying to protect trees. As you can see tonight, we're trying to save 3 trees with the Georgia Walkway, Greenway walk, the path. So we do value trees. And as you saw tonight, we stopped the project to see if we can save these trees.
You did. Thank you.
So we do take that into consideration. And that was an accident.
But you know, before an accident, that seems awfully funny to have trees. There's a number of trees on the walkway. Like there's probably about 4 altogether, I think.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boland.
Ladies and gentlemen, I ran into the problem today that's been raised by by the closing of the NRE, the problem of which has been known for many years, because I was in the habit of taking my recyclables along with my non-recyclables to the NRE in my little bags that could easily be carried. My problem is this, and I think it was magnified by your discussion tonight. There does not seem to be any plan for, where is the business plan for the city of Nanaimo in serving its citizens in the area of solid waste? It has been sort of a lackadaisical thing, as in fact it seems to me has been over the entire Nanaimo Regional District, because waste is their problem, basically, and it seems that they've subcontracted that to the city of Nanaimo, the city of Parksville, Lanceville, regional areas, whatever, so that there is no plan, even though they're responsible, there is no plan for the region that is coherent, I just don't know how do you get to that plan, and why hasn't it been worked on for the last 5 years? The citizens of Nanaimo are desperate to have their waste problem responded to uniformly rather than disparately. Why should Nanaimo citizens pay for waste pickup when you don't pick up the glass, you don't pick up the batteries, you don't pick up the bulbs? Even the normal household things are not picked up, and they are left to struggle with the problem. If you are truly going to do anything about this problem, please come up with a plan. And then, we'll see where we go from there, but it's been totally irresponsible in my area to come to this point, that all of a sudden I find out I can't take anything to the NRE anymore. By the way, just as an aside, I noticed from people in elsewhere who are dealing with recyclables that they're finding when they have a single bin for recyclables plus their paper, the paper is polluted and therefore is almost worthless because it's mixed in with all kinds of other junk. So we may wish to consider that issue as well. Waste is as you are all well aware, a tremendous problem for everybody everywhere.
Mr. Boland, your question, please.
Okay, well, okay. When can we expect a plan for the city of Nanaimo? And when can we expect some integration with the regional district plan?
So as it stands right now, we do integrate with the regional district solid waste management plan. We do integrate with that. With respect, our role is to pick up garbage and recycling.
But what it constitutes garbage and recycling, because right now, you're not picking up all the garbage and recycling, you're just picking up selected items.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, when the previous council was asked, do you wish to stay with your own recycling program, which a lot of people believed was more comprehensive than the one we have right now, or do you wish to sign up under the Multi-Materials BC program? What was explained to us at the time was, if you wish to, that the consumer is going to be charged a fee at the point of sale in the cost of goods. If you want to enroll in our program, then we will pay you to take your recycling from you. If you choose not to be part of our program, the consumer will still be charged in the cost of goods, and you'll be charging your consumers or your taxpayers the price of your recycling program. So the council of the day chose to go with the MMBC. MMBC their program is not as comprehensive as it was before.
Exactly, but the citizens have the problem, and you are responsible to and for the citizens, not for MMBC or anything else.
That's
So I'm
exactly why the
asking you to
decision
come up
was
with a
made, sir.
comprehensive program to deal with this.
That was exactly why the decision was made, was to take the $900,000 a year from MMBC, and then instead of running our own recycling program, turn it over to them at your driveway.
You turned over part of the problem to them. Why are you worried about the closure of the NRE if you don't feel responsible at all for all the rest of the things that householders have to dispose of? Anyway, I hope I've got there's no point in sitting here and belaboring this point for a long time. I just don't understand why a comprehensive city program doesn't account for all common household waste, solid waste, rather than just selected items because somebody said they'd pay for those because those are the ones they can make money at. They're obviously not making so much money that we don't have to pay fees for those things at all. And obviously, we are going to come short in how to handle all the rest of the things. So I am not against these private recyclers. And perhaps what we need to have is a fee on everything we buy. This whole thing got started. Okay, I'm going on too long. You're right.
What I would say to you, though, sir, is with respect to the reduction of the scope of the recycling service, when the MMBC came along and they said, we will give you $900,000 a year to take your recycling away. However, the list will be smaller. What we probably should have done, in hindsight, and we all know hindsight's 20/20, we should have said, instead of giving the community a $35 per household refund on their user rates annually, we should have taken that $35 and created a supplemental program where we picked up those goods like recycling, like glass, like plastic bags at curbside. You get a big truck that comes up and picks up the stuff for MMBC, there you go. You have a little truck that comes along and picks up the little bin with your bottles and jars and plastic film and so on.
Well, I think there's lots of alternatives. Let's get to them, because we had one and now it's gone.
I agree. You had another question, sir?
Oh, the other one was simply on the general agenda. When someone comes up to speak, you generally ask for their name and address. Now, some time ago, I asked the question of whether that is the correct or only response, and I was told that no, you needed your name and your residential city, the city of residence, and the address was not necessary. I want to make sure that I understand whether that is correct or we have changed somehow so that now the address is expected.
Twofold, sir, if I could. You're free to give whatever address you feel like. except for a public hearing.
Yes.
So if you're not comfortable giving your private residence address, that's okay. Our
No, I
requirement
really
is
don't
that
mind.
you provide this, your city of residence.
It's just that you ask for the residence. You ask for the address, not the location. Or do you live in Nanaimo? Anyway, again.
Thank you.
My point
The
is,
only place that changes is at a public hearing,
that's all I want to
where
be
you're
clear.
required to give your full address.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Houghton.
Hi, this question is for Councillor Hong. When you were discussing on your motion for putting info on our website regarding where we can take our recycling, you made a comment, and I'd like some clarity on it, please. You said, "We were caught off guard." We were caught off guard. What did you mean by that?
The NRE closed without notice. Nobody knew that they were closing.
Sorry?
So the NRE put a close sign up overnight and nobody noticed. Staff didn't have a plan, so we noticed we weren't communicated that, hey, we're going to be closing in 2 weeks. Hey, we're going to be closing in a month. We knew that they were closing.
Quite a while ago.
And staff didn't have a plan. That's why we were caught off guard, is that we didn't have a plan. So we were caught off guard. Even though we knew they were closing, we were caught off guard and we didn't have a plan in place. So when the time came, but again, we don't want to jump any conclusions.
But
So-
staff take their direction from you,
Yes.
right?
So we didn't.
You didn't ask staff to come up with a plan?
No, exactly what Councillor Brennan just tried to, and Councillor Thorpe argued the exact point, that we're jumping the gun. So had I directed staff 6 months ago to come up with a plan, their argument would have been the same, that we're jumping the gun, that we should let NRE.
Yeah, well, that's,
But that's what the argument was. You heard the arguments against.
anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pat McGee.
Pat McGee, Nanaimo. This question is directly, I guess, mostly to you, Your Honor, the Mayor. For question period, do you think before question period actually starts, you could inform everybody that they have to fill out a form there to put down to come up to ask a question?
That's a good point.
Because a lot of times there's people here for their first time, they would like to ask a question, so they've made the effort to come to the meeting, and then they come up here and they're not aware that they have to do that. And
no, that's a very good
the
point.
meeting's
Thank you very
adjourned, and
much.
they're sitting there saying, well, I was going to ask a question too. Okay, thank you.
We'll get the clerk to work that in. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
The next one is Jan Hastings, concerning the notice of motion to meet with VIR WIC. Forward.
Thank you. Could I please have clarification on the reason to meet with VERIC? I kind of missed that.
Exactly what I said before. We have a toilet rebate program, so where are those toilets going now?
Where things are going now?
Well, the toilets. So we have the rebate program. So since you're closed, if I wanted to take my toilet in for a rebate, where would it go?
Well, you already know the answer to that, I think. Sorry,
I don't.
need to. And so, is it not just incumbent on for-profit businesses to advertise their services? And as such, why would you be meeting with them? Are you making a plan?
Well, no, we have to meet with them because the city gives money back as a rebate. So have we negotiated with the for-profits that who is going to get the $50 and the $5 administration fee? We haven't negotiated that. Again, with the RDN, what about the yard waste? That's not fair for the other 2/3 of the city of Nanaimo that can't take their yard waste anywhere. Currently, they went to the NRE, so now do they get to go to Alpine or wherever, and are we going to pay them? Or is the RDN going to pay them to take it away? So there are fees for service that you currently, or you did, that the city and the regional district have to continue for our residents so there is no disruption.
There's no disruption to yard waste anyway because we don't get money. It just simply goes to now. That would continue. If a for-profit depot wanted to do that, would they not simply need to advertise their services? So I think, am I wrong concluding you're going to meet to make a plan?
No, we need a plan. That's exactly what I've said. We need a plan since you're closed, so the disruption of the residents of Nanaimo, it doesn't happen to them. For somebody that has yard waste, you didn't get paid for it. You got paid by the RDN to
No, we
dispose. Well, when you took it there, they paid you $270,000 last year that they paid because you took it there for them. So if the private hauler took it there, they would be paying $90 a ton. But you didn't pay $90 a ton. The RDN paid it for you. Isn't that correct?
It's their own contract. They're paying for their own contract. So let's just put that to rest.
Exactly. So we need to negotiate these contracts now with the private people to continue this service until something happens.
So you're making a plan. So I'm really curious if one depot closes, would you normally be meeting with all the other depots? Would you normally meet with the NRE and say, let's make a plan? In my experience, that's not what happens. Plans are developed at the RDN with a solid waste management plan. Would this issue now not be best directed to the RDN?
And I said that I would do that.
Before this solid waste management plan is finalized,
I think that what my motion was for temporary services.
why not do that as you did with the NRE when I came at first? You know, I've been punted to the RBN a number of times. Why is this being taken? I don't understand why it would be taken up as an issue here when that plan, you know, the privates had 3 years to attend meetings and come up with the plan. They were mostly absent from that table. So, but I think it still belongs there. Why would it not be deferred to the RDN?
Well, the yard waste one will be deferred to the RDN because we don't pay for yard waste. But my question,
if you're making a plan.
Yeah, well, my question is for the toilets. So, Mr. Sims, where do those toilets go? And who gets the rebate? And how do those people get the rebates for the toilets that they used to take to the NRE?
Your Worship, currently the regional district landfill will provide a receipt to the applicants and accept the toilets at the landfill. I don't know if it gets recycled after that point or if it just gets landfilled.
So exactly. So we need those discussions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. Yes, I think we are trying to make a plan. I think we are trying to understand what's going on. From the material I've received from NRE, you talk about all the products that you take. Well, we've heard that, and I've seen matrices that says, well, the other people don't take that. But I've heard from 1 or 2 of them that say they do take all of those things. So from my perspective, to meet with the other players in this game of business, and the shifting goalposts, the goalposts are constantly moving in this game. So I'd like to talk to the players to confirm some of the things that they take, so I know from them, because we've listened to you. You've lobbied council, the web pages have lobbied us, and obviously the recycling business is lobbying us. That's what people do. So I want to hear from those other entities too. And whether it's a meeting of some people and they report to us, or that we attend the meetings, but I like to hear it from all the players to create this plan. And I do say that recycling and garbage is a regional entity. That's why I wanted to move it to the region. And so from my perspective, yeah, I'd like to see a plan. I looked for that type of plan for a long time from all the businesses. So thank you.
Could I just follow up with one more question? When you're informed that other depots take and accept products, do you know that that's being accepted for recycling?
Well, unless we see their business plans, we don't know what
Do you
people
know that? Okay.
I don't know where your stuff goes. I don't know where your cardboard goes. I don't know where your stuff goes. I don't know. I asked you today, do you take some garbage to Cascade? And you say yes, and I understand they've taken,
No, I didn't say yes.
you said the garbage, Cascade takes your garbage and stuff.
No, I did
over to
not.
dump.
No. The landfill takes garbage.
Yeah, okay, who ships your non-used microwave? What do you do with it? If no one's buying it, where does it go?
That's an EPR program that gets recycled
Okay, where does it go?
to regeneration.
Okay, and so the styrofoam that you can't sell, where does it go?
I've never had the problem except for the stuff that gets ground into the dirt and cannot be processed. It is garbage, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Landfill.
Landfill, thank you. So some of your stuff goes to landfill?
Councillor Yocum.
Thank you. With respect to the question, Ms. Hastings, I'm not here to, my supporting the motion is simply fact, we're getting a lot of emails with people upset about what's happening, so I want to make sure they have the accurate place to go. And I personally have no issue, can't speak for the private, it's not a private versus non. I think all the users should come together and have a round table, and there's enough space for everybody. And you attend the meeting as well with staff. I would have no issue with that. It's not my place to micromanage that, but I would have no issue. Everyone involved come together because everyone has to be involved at the end of the day. I'm not in no conspiracy for profit or for a bit profit, et cetera. I just want this taken care of, and the reason I supported the motion was, we are high and dry right now. I think you respect that. We are high and dry right now, so people have to go somewhere. People have to go somewhere, and there's this disillusion out there that there's nowhere to go, and where everything's gonna go to the dump, and people are just gonna throw it in the ditches and yards and et cetera. So nevertheless, I hope you can all come together and be part of the conversation, which we're a few years behind this scene here, but nonetheless, everyone has to come together. I think there's space for all. Thank you.
I thought the place to come together was at the RDN Solid Waste Management Plan Committee, where we sat hoping we would all come together for 3 years, and I think that was the place for that. So anyway.
That's just my view. I may be wrong, and I can't create miracles. But
it's just a backhanded acknowledgement that the NRE actually did have impact in the community. Not yours. No, the motion, sorry. That we actually did have impact.
Thank you very much, everyone. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Hong, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.